Welcome to CandleLight Audiobook. The Villainess's Path to Redemption. Chapter 61. She seemed to have thought of someone. She had a slight frown on her face, as if the memory she recalled of the person she was thinking of from that day was blurry. Lane had a wide smile on his face. It's hard to meet him because he's a little busy right now, but you'll be able to meet him soon. And you'll soon find out if you see him again. Then, I have to wait. Yes, I'm sorry that I can't reveal more. No, that's fine, Lyra answered with a honey-like smile, just like her name. However, unlike Lyra, who took his rudeness for affection, a big question was still in Celine's mind. Is he in line for something since you can't even say his name? Who the hell are you talking about? Celine glanced back at the maid-in-waiting. It was Annie, of course, who was on standby, not Jessica. She hadn't brought the hourglass because Celine had felt there wouldn't have been a need for it. She couldn't help it. She didn't know who he was, so she had to ask her question without antagonizing the guest. According to her own reasoning, at least, she could only think that someone extraordinary was in the shadows. Oh, isn't he a noble of another country? Lane, who hadn't even looked at Celine, turned his head. Unlike when he was dealing with Lyra, he had a hard, cold demeanor. It had been a long time since she had seen a stare like that. Lane just raised one side of his mouth and asked why she thought so. Well, I'm sorry, but I can't think of anyone else in the Empire who has this much wealth. Moreover, he doesn't know much about Lyra. What is it that he doesn't know? He asked the same question again, as if provoking her. Why do you look at me so coldly? It was as if he were telling her he was wasting his time listening to her, and she was offended by that. What makes you change your attitude like this? Nevertheless, she could to the core of the question, bringing it up in a way that wouldn't show her knowledge completely. Lyra is soon to be engaged to someone, and everyone in the Empire knows that, but your master doesn't seem to know it. Or, he knows it, but doesn't care about. Considering the gift you brought today, both options are possible. Lane, who had turned just his head to Celine, turned his whole body to face her this time. She guessed he had finally become interested in her, but the way he raised his eyebrows at her with his cold stare still offended her. Wow! What kind of being does the lady think he is, for example? The former would be a great noble from a foreign country, someone who is not familiar with the affairs of the nobles of the Empire, and the latter. What if it's the latter? The chance was close to zero, but there was only one person in the Empire whom she could choose for that. Marquis Vincent was crazy about Corinne, so I'm certain he has to be the crown prince. Immediately, Lane's face became visibly frozen. It was for just a moment, but Celine, who had been facing him, clearly saw his expression. Before the Countess and Lyra noticed, his face changed, and suddenly, he began to laugh wildly. Celine's brow furrowed at Lane's incomprehensible behavior. That's a cute idea. I almost got persuaded by that plausible theory. So, you're saying it's neither? Well, I can't answer anything. If I say yes, you'll figure out who my master is, and if I say no, I will help the intelligent young lady, narrow down your reasoning. Lane eventually slipped out like a squirrel without answering any questions. He was a real nuisance. Because of the age difference, the honey trap that was her beauty seemed not to work on him, and he had not given her any hints after hearing her plausible reasoning. He wasn't someone ordinary to be able to keep his secrets like he wanted to or otherwise shut his mouth when he couldn't. Based on her experience, Celine classified Lane as a cause for alarm. She also had a hunch that if he and his master stuck to Lyra, she would have difficulty attaining her goal. Now that I don't have the hourglass, I have to stay calm. She could no longer keep playing into Lane's hands. Celine gently eased her face to create a lovely smile that was more appropriate for a girl her age. She had to aim for the next time. I must have been rude. Not really. It was a pretty good conversation. Lane's gaze ran deep through Celine, as if he was telling the truth. It was a little bit of an interesting look, but now that Celine was not willing to talk anymore, she ignored the look in his eyes and drank her tea. So, Lane's gaze also disappeared and went back to Lyra. A few days had passed since then, and the coming-of-age ceremony had passed too. Celine hadn't slept well for 2 days, wondering if Corinne had had as good a relationship with Marquis Vincent as she had had in the past. She could answer that question right away at tomorrow's meeting, but at the same time, she felt uneasy and overwhelmed, so she stayed up all night, her eyes wide until dawn. Celine, who had not slept for hours, was busy preparing to go out. She massaged her swollen eyes with a cold towel and took out the newly ordered light yellow dress. Unlike the simple one she had worn before, the fabric was luxurious, and the woven laces on the sleeves and bottoms were tight and beautiful. The dress added a sparkle to the rare decorations she had adorned herself with. After combing her hair finely, she stretched out a red ribbon for a while, adding to the cuteness of a girl her age. "Well, miss, can I really go like this?" Annie, who had makeup on her face and braided hair, asked. Her dusky maid's uniform remained the same. Celine thought Annie seemed very happy. She noticed her flushed ears, so she wondered, why would she say that? "Yes, it looks great. What's wrong with you?" "I've never actually followed Miss Lyra to a meeting or anything, so I was wondering if I could do this." "The rules to a woman's dress don't matter, do they? What's more, yours is not dirty. It's very prettily decorated, so who wouldn't like it? Besides, it was pretty spectacular to decorate Annie. Everyone would prefer the decorated to the unadorned, but Annie, who nobody paid attention to because of her freckles, had made a great change. Her skin was smooth, and her dead features had been brought to life in a way that was worth seeing. "I'm glad to hear that, but..." It was not like her to blur her words, so Celine let out a little airy laugh. "You don't know what the world is like." The maids who attended parties with their masters were often dressed up. They did so to seek a rise in status. The lower-class nobles, with whom other higher-class nobles did not deal, were their targets. After being pushed out of power anyway, lower-class nobles fell in love with people regardless of status, as long as they were pretty. There were also those foolish maids who said being a secret lover would be good enough if becoming the wife was too difficult. That was what those who trusted only their appearance did. They were idiots who would be abandoned when their youth was over. Maybe that was Celine in the past, and she smiled at that thought. Celine left the mansion with her, hoping that Annie would enchant an idiot. "Oh, dear Lady Celine. You've grown so tall while we were apart." "That's what I'm saying. Not long ago, she was so small. It looks like she's been through a growth spurt, doesn't it? I also grew taller all of a sudden. You look very good. You even filled out a little more than before. You seem a little bit more mature than your age. You look so pretty today too. Did you buy a new dress?" The young ladies, who hadn't seen her in a while, talked like birds chirping in the morning. In the past, she had grown taller and gained weight at around this time, so she would be changing constantly. "You don't mean to be this loud every time, right?" Celine smiled brightly and responded to their praise. "I guess it's because I've had a lot of fun lately and I've had great appetite. Meeting with all of you is one of those highlights. You don't know how long I've been waiting for today." Chapter 62. It's lovely for us too. Lady Celine takes all our hearts again. Her appearance itself caught their attention, and she was the youngest member of the group. The other young ladies were at a loss after hearing Celine's flattering words. None of them knew what to do. Celine changed the subject by giggling at their words of love. "How was your coming-of-age ceremony? I'm so curious because mine is still far away. There are so many things to talk about, in fact." "A great thing has happened," a young lady, who had joined with Corinne at the coming-of-age party, replied with glistening eyes. Needless to say, she was talking about Corinne. It was natural, but it was reassuring to hear that events had flowed as before. "What happened? I'm so curious. I'm not the person directly involved in the incident, so it's hard to tell you. I hope Lady Corinne will come soon." "Is this about Lady Corinne?" "Yes, a wonderful thing happened, but I'm not sure if I can tell you." She looked hazy, as if she were dreaming. She seemed to have witnessed the moment that Marquis Vincent and Corinne met. In her life as a lower-class aristocrat, she had few chances to meet and connect with a man as great as Marquis Vincent, so it was natural to react like that. The young ladies gathered there waited for Corinne to arrive with their hearts in their hands. Corinne had always been on time, but she was very late today. Celine simply waited for her to come, wanting to know what else had happened following the ceremony. Corinne appeared around an hour after the meeting had begun. In the meantime, the young ladies, who had been bored of waiting, talked about useless stories, and Celine introduced Annie to them, saying that she had brought her new maid. What a beautiful maid she is. Annie blushed even though she knew it was an empty compliment. I'm sorry I'm late. Did you wait long? Lady Corinne. Did something happen to you? Corinne had never been late for a meeting, so they had no doubt that something had happened to her. Corinne blushed softly. Yes, something happened. Something had happened to her. Celine knew the future, but her eyes shone with anticipation just like those of the other young ladies in attendance. What the hell happened? Wouldn't it have something to do with the coming-of-age ceremony? The young ladies who had waited for a long time were unrestrained. They were so curious because Corinne didn't explain it in detail. Corinne sincerely answered their questions about whether she seemed not to hide anything. You can say that. What the hell happened to the coming-of-age party? The Marquis of Vincent picked up the handkerchief I dropped. Oh, my God. Really? The young ladies expressed surprise in their own way that something unimaginable had happened. Celine, who knew the future, also joined in by wrapping her cheeks in her palms. As if she was shy, Corinne dyed her face red. So what? So what happened? Did he take it? I'm ashamed, but he did. He said the embroidery on my handkerchief is beautiful and asked for it. And then what? That's not the end, is it? He asked for a dance, and we danced together. He was soft and caring, unlike what they say in the rumors that he was blunt. He had become a family head at a young age in his late teens, so he had devoted himself to his work and hadn't had a woman around him. He had not also attended any of the parties except for the coming-of-age ceremonies. Because of the celebration of the aristocracy who would be an adult, the participation of the noblemen representing each family was essential. The only place to see the Marquis of Vincent had been the coming-of-age party, but he had always been busy with his work, so he was likely to leave after showing his face in a brief time. He was about to go back to do so again this time, but he had run into Corinne. Oh my God. How did this happen? If the Marquis of Vincent asked you to dance, he must have been in love with you at first sight. He was young, capable, and handsome, so he was always the target of unmarried young ladies. The fact that he had a blunt personality, and they could not see him often, was playing a part. Who can win the heart of that ironclad man? Perhaps I can be the one. That was their psychology of expectation. So why is his servant here today? Although it was obvious that it would be a return or a request for a date since they danced together, the young ladies who wanted to confirm it with Corinne's mouth glistened their eyes and waited for her answer. He sent me a bouquet of flowers and a necklace as a gift. And then? And there was a letter asking me to take a walk with him to the lake before the snow melts. Ah. How could he be so romantic? It was only as much as others did, but because of the widely spread rumors that the Marquis of Vincent was blunt, they quickly lowered their standard of evaluation. Corinne glanced at Celine with a troubled smile amongst the young ladies, saying that it would be good to buy a dress to go for a walk by the lake. Do you like the Marquis of Vincent, Lady Corinne? At a sudden question from Celine, everyone stopped talking and doing and looked back at her. What are you talking about right now? He is the Marquis of Vincent. Do you have anything to argue about? They were sure Corinne liked him because she had been given his attention. And Corinne also looked back at Celine. But Corinne certainly didn't say yes. It was because before she liked him, she thought about the fact that the Marquis of Vincent had paid attention to her. She was just so happy that such a great man had talked to her that she couldn't fathom what she had really felt. Celine followed on behalf of Corinne, who could not answer. I want Lady Corinne to hang out with a happy person. Of course, the opponent must be the Marquis of Vincent. Celine had heard rumors that Corinne was very happy with her marriage. Celine recalled the expression of the Marquis of Vincent, whom she had occasionally encountered at the coming-of-age ceremony. Contrary to the current widespread rumors, he had been gentle, and she guessed that it must have been due to Corinne's influence. Nevertheless, asking her opinion was to give such occasional advice in this way. Corinne blushed at what Celine was trying to say. She was an easy woman that could be moved easily, perhaps because of her good feelings toward her. "Thank you, Lady Celine. I didn't really think of it that way. I'm sure the Marquis of Vincent is a good man, but I hope Lady Corinne will take the path of being truly happy. I'll keep that in mind. It's all thanks to Lady Celine." "Of course, you have to thank me." The very large stem that would be responsible for Celine's future moved smoothly. Celine felt like she could get a good night's sleep today. Annie's condition was unusual for several days after the meeting. She looked as if she were dreaming. The Countess was assumed to have raised her status thanks to her excellent looks, but Corinne was not. It must have been a shock to her, as Corinne's appearance had attracted the attention of the most powerful man in the empire. "Annie, didn't you clean that place earlier?" "Oh, I'm sorry, miss." Annie was already cleaning the window frame for the third time. Jessica had wiped it out in the morning, and it was so clean. "My room is clean, so you don't have to clean it anymore. Come here and sit down." At Celine's beckoning, Annie came running and sat in front of her. "How was the first meeting?" "It was really great." "It was too much for me." "Really?" "Yes. The ladies were all pretty, but I was very surprised because you were the prettiest of them all. I didn't know that because I saw you every day, but I thought you were really pretty." Celine didn't ask her to do that, but she buttered her up. Annie, who gained confidence when she saw Celine smiling a little, raised her voice. "How come you're so pretty when you do not decorate yourself so fancy? Is that because you were born pretty, isn't it? The Countess is so beautiful, and you must have inherited it." Chapter 63. After complimenting Celine, her lips curled up a little as she realized she had not inherited such beauty. Celine picked up a macaron. Its destination was in front of Annie's lips. Annie's eyes were wide open. "You were so pretty today, too. Do you have any idea how cute you were today?" "Really? Well, if you were ugly, I wouldn't take you there. Did you forget the young ladies that complimented you?" Annie's face turned red. "Yeah, you have to yearn more and more. Be proud and arrogant beyond self-confidence. Fill the mansion with dumb people like you, so that Lyra can't do anything. What if I take you to a meeting where young men are?" The macaron rubbed on Annie's lips and left a stain on it. The purple powder left in place of the macaron dyed Annie's lips. Slowly lowering her eyes, Annie's eyes blushed at the murmur of Celine. "Wouldn't they want to steal your cute lips?" Annie was so cute when she moved her sweet butt. "I think it'll be as sweet as this macaron. What do you think?" A little force at her fingertips pushed the macaron in, and half of it went into Annie's mouth. Her eyes dimmed with the purple macaron, and she blushed. Celine, who stroked her cheek once, held a dark temptation like a wicked woman who had been decapitated and died. "I trust you will do a good job until then, Annie." As long as he moved as Celine wanted, her rise in status was not a dream that could not be achieved. No, it might be very easy because there was the hourglass that could give her back her time. Annie, who cut the macaron, nodded with a bewitching face. Corinne seemed to be in contact with the Marquis of Vincent quite often. Who said that she was busy with work? Celine could tell what was going on without looking at them. The Marquis fell in love with Corinne. Corinne was also very fond of him, who was caring for her and showed unleashing interest in her. So she asked Celine for advice, including a recent report, whenever she had a class. It was strange to ask for help from Celine, who was 4 years younger than her, but it was so helpful that her face brightened with each passing day. "I don't know if I can really do that." "Of course you can. Corinne's hands are so warm. When I hold your hand like this, it feels like I'm holding my mom's hand." After 2 walks by the lake, she said she was worried about the cold hands of the Marquis of Vincent. Ordinary young ladies would have given gloves as gifts, but Celine recommended that she held his hand tightly and share her warmth to him. Who doesn't like it when a man's favorite woman is holding his hand? It was even more so for a casual man such as the Marquis of Vincent, who had stayed away from women. It was clear that the heat from her hand would penetrate his heart and paralyze his rational thinking. Everything Lady Celine said was right, so I'll try it again. Thank you for believing, Corinne. Now winter is coming to an end, but, may I prepare gloves for him, too? Yes, you'd rather give them to him as a gift when your date is over. He would open it in a wagon on his way back and think about Corinne all night. Corinne's warm hands and gloves, which held the hands of the Marquis, would overlap. He would be in a stew over you. Oh, my God. Corinne couldn't hide her surprise. Corinne must be wondering how young Celine was so good at dating. It was due to past experience of having numerous men already, but it was impossible to say so Celine smiled shyly and equivocated. I guess a lot of love stories I heard before I joined the Vermont family helped. Among the common people, someone's love story is the most enjoyable entertainment. Because it's not easy to get books, it's often passed on through word of mouth. A 5-year-old also used to give advice. That must have been fun. Yes, it's one of my most enjoyable memories. And I'm happy to be able to help Corinne this way. Now that it was time to finish the class, both of them went down together to the first floor, so Celine could see Corinne off. But the carriage waiting in front of the entrance door was not Corinne's. Surely, I've given Annie an instruction in advance. Looking back at Annie, her face became pale. It was a look of injustice. Considering her usual behavior, it was hard to say that she would make such a mistake. Perhaps someone arrived before waiting for Corinne's carriage, or it was someone greater than Corinne. Isn't that Lady Celine? Mr. Lane. Sure enough, it was Lane who got off the wagon. Celine thought his visit was rare recently, but he visited the mansion of Count Vermont without fail. Her father and mother were out, and he should have made an appointment. Even after reading Celine's troubled expression, Lane did not care at all. I'm sorry I came here all of a sudden. I only have time now. Maybe it was because Lyra was not there. He beckoned his servant with a rather stiff face. It had been great last time, but Celine thought he brought a bunch of eye-catching gifts again. Celine hardened her face at the sight of the huge gifts. My mother and father are out. Did Lady Lyra go out, too? No. That's enough. I'm just here to have a cup of tea with her. No, she couldn't. She couldn't leave Lane and Lyra alone. She didn't know who the man was or who his master was. She couldn't keep such a dangerous person close to Lyra. Why don't you come back next time when my father is here? I don't know when I'll be free again. And wouldn't the idea of having tea with a single young girl without her parents' consent be a little dangerous? Don't worry. Do you think I'm that bad? I don't think so, but I'm afraid there's going to be a bad rumor about Lyra. The soft, fresh Celine that had just been around was nowhere to be found now. As if to worry about her little sister with a bit of a hard face and tone, Corinne was worried about her and grabbed her hand. Who is this man? Does Celine, who is kind to everyone, have this attitude? However, there was dampness on the palm of her hand that Corinne could never question. Corinne, therefore, realized that Celine was very nervous and felt that she considered this matter seriously. Before the man who was wearing an annoying smile could say anything, Corinne hastened to cut in between them. Well, why don't you have tea together with us? I was just about to get thirsty. Corinne? Celine turned around and Corinne gave strength to her hand. Only then did Celine realize that her hands were damp. She was not also aware of her expression. She showed an ugly look. Whenever unforeseen events and figures appeared, she could not control her behavior and speech. Luckily, Lane readily accepted Corinne's offer. Good. As Lady Celine said, there's a considerable age gap, but the combination of both a single man and a single woman does not look good. If Corinne wasn't here. A cold sweat broke out on her back when she thought about that. She might have crossed the line and shown an ugly look. If she had had the hourglass, she would have turned back the time, but unfortunately, she had come down to see off and hadn't brought it. She almost showed her true colors to a person who she didn't even know his true identity. It was a good thing. Celine, who felt some reassurance, made a tender look again and smiled at Corinne. Corinne also smiled back as if telling her not to worry. Really, is Corinne a guardian from heaven? Oh, come to think of it. I also have something for Lady Celine this time. Before heading to the lounge to serve the guests, it was the tulip bouquet that Lane gave her. He offered a wagon load of presents to Lyra, and it was only a bouquet of flowers to herself. It couldn't even be compared. It's nearly nothing. Even though he visited Lyra, it had been a long time since someone had openly discriminated against her. Chapter 64. If there were sisters, it was common to bring gifts that were similar. But she received only a bouquet of flowers like this. Nevertheless, Celine received the bouquet of flowers with a happy face, not expressing what was really on her mind. Thank you. It's a pretty tulip. It's my master's favorite flower. I see. Usually, people like the flowers of their family the most, but he must be very patriotic. Well, I can say that. Celine, who gave a fresh smile in return for the bouquet, took her nose to the tulip bouquet and smelled it. Whether it was not the flower she could easily smell on the streets, she could smell the fresh, heavy fragrance from it. It smells so good. I don't think it's the usual smell of flowers. Where did you buy it? Celine asked, slowly blinking her eyelids full of eyelashes. Her beautiful face mingled with the flowers. Lane briefly looked into Celine's eyes with a faint frown in the middle of his forehead. I bought it near the mansion. Then he quickly turned his head to avoid her as if he had seen something wrong. If it's still this fresh, I guess it's from the capital, right? It's a lot closer than I thought. Lane gave a look implying that he had made a mistake at the moment. Celine, who had fixed her gaze on him all the time, was able to catch that moment. Celine realized that his master was not a foreign aristocrat. He seemed to serve his master nearby, and it meant that his master was staying in the capital. However, from the beginning, putting a foreign aristocrat on the list was simply a delusion. Lane's speech tone was a sample of the imperial standard language. If he served a foreign aristocrat or came from a foreign country, he would not be able to speak such a clean standard language. It would be different somewhere. According to Celine's experience, it was so. Then who the hell is it? Don't tell me he is the crown prince. No way. He would marry Princess Frederick soon. There was no way he would pay attention to Lyra when there were already a lot of rumors about his engagement with Princess Frederick. In addition, Lyra was nothing but a person who was entangled with the family that his engagement talk was coming and going. If this absurd idea was true and not an imagination, it was clear that it would bring bloody wind to the empire. He wouldn't do that if he had an idea. Celine shook her head, saying that this would never be the case. I'm curious about other kinds of flowers, too. If you don't mind, could you tell me about the flower shop? I'll let you know later. Right now, a little. I'm in trouble. Yes, and whenever you change your mind, let me know. I will. Little by little, Lane's reply was becoming late, perhaps because he realized that he had leaked information about his master's identity. He glanced at her face, worried that Celine might have noticed the little information. It's a rare tulip, so if she looks it up, she'll find out where it was purchased. So Celine smiled brightly as if she knew nothing. Lane returned to his first expression once he realized that his opponent was only 15 years old. Annie, would you put it in my room? Please keep it well so that it would not wither. And bring me the box I always carried with me. Yes, miss. While a maid had gone to call for Lyra, Celine waited for Lyra in the lounge with Corinne and Lane. It took quite some time because she wasn't prepared to greet anyone at all. In the meantime, the three remained silent for a while as there was no word to say. The room was silent, and the only thing they could hear was the sound of their teacups when they were putting them down. In the end, Corinne was the first to speak as she could not bear the silence anymore. So I'm late to say hello because I had no time to mind others. It's a great pleasure to meet you. I'm Corinne of the family of Viscount Lauren. Oh, my. I've been rude to a lady. I'm Pinot Lane. Lane got up from his seat and bowed politely. The two introduced each other with impeccably clean greetings. You must be busy at work. Yes, my master is very capricious. Well, because he has the ability, he seems to be capricious. I'm ashamed of you to say that. Unlike when he was talking to Celine a while ago, gentle energy flowed out of him. It was like a leisurely conversation between nobles. In a subdued atmosphere, Corinne and Lane sometimes held jasmine tea in their mouths and enjoyed its relaxed flavor while continuing their conversation. When I see you visit like this, you have been close enough to Lady Lyra for so long. No, she was an acquaintance of my master, not me. I'm just delivering gifts to her and asking how she gets along. I see. I am sorry I was rude. No, I'm not hiding it. You are not even rude. They didn't know his master's identity, but he didn't have anything to hide. While Corinne and Lane were talking, Annie brought a box of the hourglass. Celine fiddled with a pocket watch on her neck. Her hands were shaking because she hadn't used it in the meantime. Click. She opened the pocket watch and pressed the button. The first needle sped quickly into the future. Can I get information from him who pretends to be relaxed on the surface but is actually wary like a furry cat? Celine, who had a precious box next to her from Annie, turned toward Lane. As long as the hourglass was around her, it would be fine. No matter what she said, it was all over if she turned the hourglass over. Mr. Lane, why is your master interested in Lyra? Lane answered without hesitation because it was a question she had asked before. As I said before, she is intelligent and quickly gets information. My master noticed that she has an excellent ability, and my master would like to teach her how to make the right use of it. What kind of information did Lyra use? Above all, she couldn't agree on the fact that Lyra had got information quickly. Could Lyra have achieved any great feat without realizing it? If she had done it, she must have been bragging it all over town, and Celine couldn't understand why she didn't know that. You're saying she helped my father's business? I can say yes. The Count said she always gave advice to the business. This was the story she had heard last time. Indeed, did the Count make up his words by exaggeration? Lyra's advice had not been accepted by the Count, so she could only think of it like that. And at the thought of it, everything was consistent. Truly, a daughter and a father are so foolish. He might have said a few words to show off his daughter, but if someone took it lightly, there would not be any problems. But she couldn't imagine doing so to someone who paid all his attention to Lyra. She didn't think he was an ordinary aristocrat, but how could he handle it later? Of course, if Oscar and Lyra married, the Count would be at the pinnacle of power and wealth, so no one would easily confront him, but wouldn't he be ashamed? Everyone in the aristocracy was bluffing, but this time it was too much. Did you hear the details? Celine wondered what the Count might have said. How will such an earnest person react when the facts turn out to be false and exaggerated? Yes, I was particularly impressed by the advice Miss Lyra gave her father. This time she responded before the fashion. Did you say fashion? The fur. I heard she noticed it before the princess led the fashion. Lyra? Celine's fine hand that was holding the watch trembled. That was not what Lyra had said. That was what Celine had told the Count. In return, Celine had even got a birthday present and a jewelry box. She couldn't understand why it had come to Lyra's accomplishment. Celine was speechless for a moment. Even though she was not his own daughter, it was a little bit too much to take away her exploits by lying. Then, in wonder, Corinne, who called her name, managed to come to her senses. Did my father say that? Lyra gave him advice on fur? Chapter 65. Lane frowned faintly at Celine's expression and speech tone. He recalled whether he had made a mistake or not. He briefly recalled the past to answer Celine's questions and asked her back in reverse as if nothing had gone wrong. Maybe. It came out naturally when I had the story of Lady Lyra. Is there a problem? She didn't believe it, but she thought he might admit something to her if she tried. Yes, I see. Somehow her eyes got hot. But she didn't feel like she was going to cry. The fever seemed to have gone up. Celine's gaze that was slowly blinking away headed for the hourglass. When she found out that the needle was approaching the top, she took out the hourglass from the box. Yes, because I was the one who told my father about the fur. Yeah. I'm the one who helped him with the fur business. Lyra always had a bunch of useless, crude garbage. I mean, it's like everybody can think about it. My father never used it for business. What are you talking about? So it means Lyra is a stupid bitch, enough to take away even the few exploits of a wicked bitch. Celine. Corinne, sitting next to her, spoke up at the shocking nature of the wicked woman. Lane also said nothing with his eyes wide open. Looking at them, Celine turned the hourglass over without hesitation. Then came Corinne and Lane, who pretended to be relaxed and drank tea. This brought Celine's exploits back to Lyra's side. I shouldn't have turned the hourglass over. She thought for a moment, but she couldn't. No matter how much the Count gave his credit to his own daughter, he was still the head of the Rosent family and an influential man. She couldn't make him an enemy with useless words. But one question arose. It was whether helping the Count's business in the future would be helpful to her life. She could get his care a little, but she thought it wouldn't help because all the credit would go to Lyra as it was now. Maybe it doesn't matter if I just pretend to be decent. It was clear that expectations on her would be low, anyway. Doesn't he think I would look pretty if I stayed still? Her heart started to beat faster with an unexpected sense of betrayal. The hand that returned the hourglass to the box was full of force. A moment later, Lyra, appearing in a quiet lounge as if nothing had happened, was in a very fancy dress. When she listened to their conversation, she realized that all the clothes she wore were gifts from Lane's master. After all, who would dress like that indoors? I'm sorry to have kept you waiting a long time. No, it's my fault that I just popped in. You look really good in your outfit. Thank you. I've been thinking about what to wear for a long time because there are so many beautiful things. You're beautiful no matter what you wear. I'm embarrassed. Lyra was shy and blushed. She pretended to be innocent while she was totally different inside. She acted like that even though they were words she heard all the time, and Celine laughed at her. The tea with plenty of honey was bitter. Celine took a bite of a canapé with cheese on it and removed the remnants of bitter honey from her mouth. I don't know what to do today because your master gave me too many presents. Never mind. It's not a gift that my master overdid himself. Does Lyra know that all the clothes and jewelry she's wearing aren't hers? Can't she twist that pretty face even though she knows it? And one more thing. If Lane's master found out that the vulgar, wicked woman was the one who had helped the Count's business, how would he react? Would he still treat Lyra the same way? Celine was not sure if Lane's master would continue siding with Lyra, but she would be able to expect the same reaction. It was only after Lyra greeted Lane for a long time that she gave Corinne a look. She opened her eyes and bowed her head as if she had found someone who had not been there. Oh, are you my sister's tutor? Yes. I'm sorry for the late introduction. I'm Corinne of the family of Viscount Lauren. Please give me a favor, Lady Lauren. Lyra's greeting was polite and neat, but her neglect for Corinne implicitly came out. Most of all, she talked in a casual way without revealing her name. Is it because she's a lady of the Viscount family of low class? Or does she not have a fancy look? Or she is a wicked woman's tutor? Celine didn't know which one of those was the reason, but everything listed earlier must have been the reason. Yes, I also ask you to give me a favor. Corinne seemed a little surprised by Lyra's attitude, but she didn't show any signs of it. Instead, she paid more attention to her manners and tried to avoid being blamed. Lyra smiled softly. As expected, you're the one who coached Celine, who's not yet used to the noble society. That's too much. Who wants to praise and acknowledge who? Lyra, do you know that Corinne would become the Marquise soon after, and unlike you, who forced Oscar to be engaged, she would be loved by the Marquis of Vincent? Alas, maybe even if she found out, Lyra would stick to that lofty attitude. She had a fancy imagination that she would marry the successor of the Frederick family. However, a vulgar wicked woman who knew the future would never let that happen. And the curse of the wicked girl had been partly in progress. Unlike the cold look he had sent to Lyra, Celine still couldn't forget the look Oscar had when looking at her. Poor Lyra, so die miserably. I'll get rid of all the people around you. Let them share the pain of their heads cut. Celine took a sip of her tea that had been sweetened again by her laugh. What do you study at other times? At other times? I enjoy reading a book from my father's study or having a discussion under the guidance of teachers. Of course, there was a variable called Lane beside Lyra, but Celine had a hunch that she would not have to worry about him as she heard their conversation. Lyra was being tested by Lane now. Oh, I see. I'm similar. Well, is there a topic you've been interested in lately? A topic of interest? Let me see. Lyra, who was cocking her head as if she was thinking, could not answer easily. Celine guessed it was because Lyra was trying hard to think even though she was not smart and intelligent, anxious about how she could look good to the unidentified man. It must be hard to squeeze out what was not there. I have been thinking about my father's new business. Oh, do you have any specific thoughts? What is it? Lane glared at Lyra's words that she was thinking about the Count's business with that smart brain. Yes, but I can't let you know. I'm only going to let my father know a little. Huh, my dear. I almost stole the important business secrets. Lane gave a cool smile as if he was very cute. But is it really a secret? I don't think there's anything in it. Would that be of little help even if you had it? Why didn't you tell him, Lyra? Let Lane laugh at you as hard as he can. So what do you think about reopening the casino? Casino? Yes, the casino that's been reopened for quite some time a while back. Oh, you mean the casino where the human trafficking case took place? Yes. Lane put the story on the hot topic. What Lyra knew about the casino incident was that she read a few lines of newspapers. It was obvious that there would be little nutritious talk. And fortunately, Lane struggled to ask Lyra questions so that Celine wouldn't be disappointed. It might be ordered by his master. Lane told Lyra that his master had met her, but it seemed to have been a very short moment since Lyra could not remember, and the only thing that the Count had really boasted about his daughter was the fur business. That's why he wants to decide whether she is authentic. His master wanted to know whether she was really clever or not. As the Crown Prince was involved, Lyra seemed to know quite a bit about the casino incident, and she was outspoken and clearly talked about her thoughts. Chapter 66. He's eliminated the risk once, so it should be reopened. Would the security be tight, wouldn't it? Above all, the Crown Prince said he would take care of it himself. As expected, you think so? Yes, this is what His Highness does. It might be a good idea to boost his investment and expand the business in the future. It should be enough to be known to other countries. I agree. Would it be nice to use it as a symbol of the capital? Right. How about building a statue of the Crown Prince? I've heard rumors that he is a handsome man. That sounds like a great idea. Having heard Lyra's very ordinary and simple proposal, Lane responded with a loud response. She couldn't hide her joy since her thoughts were accepted and continued to make a suggestion that everyone could think of, and Lane replied, praising that it was an excellent idea. She seemed to feel her thoughts and opinions were as great as ever as always. Was Lyra with no keen notice, like that? Lyra couldn't even feel Lane's disappointment. Although he didn't express his feelings, he didn't go deep into her thoughts and opinions and only responded appropriately. It was almost as if the Count was the one who heard the foolish opinions of Lyra. You asked him to set a statue of the Crown Prince. What a foolish idea it was. It was so childish. The Crown Prince was not a hero who put a flag on the conquest, but what kind of statue was she going to build? She was so childish that Celine laughed at it. Sister? Then Lyra responded straight away. She seemed to have been paying attention even if she had pretended not to do so. It was worth it because Celine had taken the eyes of Oscar and Kane. Celine was also bothered about what Lyra and Lane were talking about while she was away. Celine wiped her lips with a handkerchief and apologized briefly as all the attention was paid to her because her name was called. "I'm sorry. I was drinking tea and... Are you all right? There are such times." Celine nodded calmly because Corinne asked with a worried face. It was obvious that she was being mocked, but Corinne, who only knew the lovely Celine, seemed to be just worried about her. "Do you have anything to say?" But that wasn't for Lyra and Lane. It was appropriate to say that she was being mocked because it happened while they were talking. He asked why Celine was being mocked because he was bored and disappointed in his conversation with Lyra. "Well, I don't know if I can join. Anyone in the house is free to make their own decisions." "Alas, how boring would you be when you talk to Lyra and get an opinion from a wicked woman? You came here to get her heart with a heap of wealth, but you couldn't resist boredom. So you talked to the daughter of a humble prostitute first. Wouldn't your master be angry and resentful if he knew?" "Well, it's simple, but I'd like to show my thoughts." "Yes, please," Lane replied with a tone of whether he expected something or not. It was because of Celine's reasoning that she had shown him once in a while. Since she was a vulgar woman of low birth and the rumors were not ordinary, he seemed to wonder if her previous sharp reasoning was a coincidence. Nevertheless, his eyes glowed with anticipation just in case. "I think they'd better shut down the casino." "Why?" Lane frowned at the extreme opinions. "I think a casino that can be used for people who dream of making a fortune at one stroke, no matter how legal, will devastate the spirit and soul of the people. And it would soon become a reality. Unlike the days when Viscount Lupre managed it, the casino that the prince himself was in charge of was very prosperous under the hands of the crown prince. It was also because of the reassurance and trust that the empire would manage them. Therefore, there were a number of people who had lost their entire fortune to the casino, which was a legitimate gamble, and the damage went to the nobility. The Countess, Celine's mother, in the past, also caused minor trouble to the Count by throwing away enough money to dispose of the jewels she had. Fortunately, the Countess had to read his countenance for a while, although their relationship recovered over time. Therefore, Celine intended to give proper caution or accompany the casino to give advice. There were quite a few people who lost their fortune even when Viscount Lupre was managing it, but she heard that the business was not expanded or promoted properly, and he touched the illegal business. However, if the crown prince was involved, who would be able to embrace it all at once? "You mean they're going to lose their money because of gambling?" "That's what I think. If there's a rumor that the crown prince is in charge of it, unlike when Viscount Lupre was in charge, they'd be relieved to invest their money. Because of the nature of gambling, the majority of people will lose money." "You have a point. Then why not impose restrictions?" "How are you going to impose restrictions?" "Well, if we decide how much they can spend according to their own property." "Really? I wonder how you'll study and set standards when they have different assets. Even if the number of aristocrats was small and the taxes they paid were large, it would be easy to identify them. However, how would they investigate a large number of commoners? Even if one or two commoners went bankrupt, it would not deal a serious blow to the entire empire. But what if the number went up? If they fell, who would pay small but solid taxes and support the base of the empire? The noblemen who led elegant lives on them would also be dealt a fatal blow. That's... Lane blurred his words. There seemed to be no alternative. It was the same with Celine. So she thought it would be better to end the casino business because she did not think of an alternative plan to prepare. The people who enter the casino with the dream of making a big fortune first. Before the words were spoken, Celine looked at Lyra once and smiled brightly. They'll see the statue of the crown prince. And this is what they're going to think: it's a casino managed by the crown prince, and I'm sure it will enrich my life. Lyra's shaking eyes fell on Celine. The saliva-sucking look seemed to wait for the next word for Celine. Lane's face hardened if he had guessed what she would say. But what if they lose money? What do you think of the thing they will face after losing all their property and being kicked out of the casino? Even if I don't tell you anymore, you will know that. Celine picked up a cup of tea and kept some cold black tea in her mouth. Lane clenched his fists as if she was a little bit of a wicked woman who enjoyed tea gracefully with her long, rich eyelashes down. As Lyra spoke with her short foolish thought, she did not overcome the shame and could not answer any. So it was lovely Corinne who answered Celine's question. It must be a statue of His Highness. That's right. But if he faces people crying out at his statue, His Highness must not be very pleased. Lyra's brow creased as it could be seen. What a pleasant surprise. It looked very well suited to the foolish woman. She should know how foolish she was. Why did Lyra still think her ideas were great? Facing Lyra's face, Celine shook her head, making a surprised face. Lyra, you're not offended, are you? It's just a hypothesis and I'm not ignoring your opinion. His Highness's statue? In fact, I really want to see it. I can't wait to imagine how beautiful it will be. Yes. I don't know his face, so I'd like to see him as a statue. Corinne helped, but Lyra's face was hardly loosened. Is it okay for a saint to narrow the middle of her forehead while a wicked girl is smiling? Of course, it was a very pleasant and enjoyable situation. Lane's eyes were fixed on Celine for a while. It seemed quite shocking that a young girl of only 15 came up with this idea. She was the daughter of a prostitute who even had a bad reputation. Lane must be aware of the rumor. Chapter 67. Ha! Lane, who had been stiff for a while, suddenly threw up his vain smile. The eyes were still fixed on Celine. Lyra's shadow, which he had intended to get, had suddenly disappeared. Instead, there was a new shadow on his face, tired of a private conversation. Lane, who had been looking at Celine as if he had been deprived of his soul for some time, touched his face once with his big palms, and then burst out laughing as if he had lost his mind. Because of this, Lyra, wearing a mask, straightened her face and called his name. Mr. Lane? But the place where his answer was directed at was Celine, not Lyra. Oh, my God, I've learned a lot. What do you mean? Lane's laughter grew thick when Celine pretended not to know. The idea of a casino. I didn't think we had to shut it down, but I was impressed by the new view. Really? I think it's a simple hypothesis that anyone can think of. Of course, Lyra wouldn't have been able to think of it. Lane burst out laughing again at her humble but never humble way of speaking. If I don't excuse you, please let me know. What kind of study is Lady Celine doing every day, and how do you have such deep thoughts? Isn't that the question you asked Lyra? What if Lyra cried? Swallowing a smile, Celine replied, there's nothing special. What is it, for example? Well, would you believe they are a newspaper that is mixed with all kinds of gossip, the experience of being decapitated, the hourglass? It's true, but you'll never believe it. You will mock, saying that the wicked woman is finally out of her mind. I'm similar to Lyra. I'm taught by the wives, I read books, and sometimes I read newspapers. Oh, and there was one more important source of information. It's very helpful to listen to my father and Lyra's conversation. They tell me a lot of information that I don't know. That's why I listen very carefully. In particular, Lyra had given Celine a good idea of when and how to release the information. It had been only once that Celine had given information to the Count, but it had been helpful in many ways. Isn't that right now? Lyra had given her a chance to shame her by gnawing at her own flesh. Today's conversation was also very informative. Was that so? At first glance, Celine seemed to praise Lyra, but in the end, it meant that she often got the chance to show off her knowledge based on Lyra's clumsy knowledge. If it were as naive and flat as Corinne, she wouldn't know. Lane and Lyra must have noticed it. Really? That's a surprise. That's what I do sometimes. That's why you make such a transparent attack now. Do you want to argue that this shameful situation is not one-sided? You've just had a look on your face that people can't think of as a noblewoman's. Ah, yes, you might have been all the way in the past. However, Celine had stolen everything that Lyra had always shown off only a few months ago. Did you hate the dumb, wicked bitch who boasted of simple poetry at all? In retrospect, it was a time when she was always hidden in the shadows like weeds withering in a noble light. The feeling that had always dominated her in the past rose from the depths of her stomach. From now on, I'll make you taste such a bitter pain. You know what? I'm very grateful. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here either. Really? That's a good thing. It was no use pretending to be lofty now. It would have been nice to see Lyra running out of the lounge, throwing things at her like she had done in the past. But Lyra was a noblewoman from the beginning. It was easier to laugh than to get angry, and rather than throwing things, she was used to covering her mouth with a fan. Please give me a favor in the future, Lyra. So do I, sister. The smiling sisters, wearing a pretense on their faces, looked friendly to anyone. Because it was Lyra's specialty to bully and afflict Celine beyond anyone else's knowledge, and now Celine was imitating it. Corinne and Lane went back because the sun went down during the conversation. The gaze, which had always been on Lyra, sometimes headed to Celine and left some remnants after saying goodbye. Was he trying to fill his disappointment of Lyra? Or did he realize that the Count's proud daughter was not Lyra? Whatever it wasn't a bad situation because the attention towards Lyra had been reduced a little. Celine, who went back to her room after using the hourglass in a long time, slept all day and could not wake up until the next evening. Jessica hurriedly brought her honey as she rubbed her stiff eyes and got up. Jessica had called in a doctor to check her master's health and experienced the same thing several times, so she no longer caused any more noise. She was just a little worried. Well, miss. I found out where they sell the bouquet you said. Oh, you mean the tulip? You got to know pretty quickly. Celine remembered having her come to know just before she had fallen asleep. Jessica had carried out with a bouquet of flowers since Celine had not ordered her to do anything except cleaning, and she seemed to have been bored and liked it. So, where do they sell it? I think the flower shop near the Imperial Castle is the most likely one. Near the Imperial Castle? Yes, I've been to flower shops that deal with the finest flowers, in the Empire, and they said in a voice that there is the only place that deals with such fine flowers. And I went there and found out that there were a lot of similar tulips. Near the Imperial Castle. There were a lot of noblemen's mansions there, and it made sense. In particular, there were many mansions of high-ranking nobles who worked at the Imperial Castle. Then, is it one of the nobles? She thought she could quickly find out who he was if she investigated the flower shops, but it seemed to be a miscalculation. Good job. Oh, by the way, they said that the tulips they handle are provided from the Imperial Castle. I heard that they can handle the finest tulips in the Empire. It's also a tulip that doesn't wither while using unique medicine. Look. It's still fresh, isn't it? It also smells great. Tulips really, as she said, were fresh and seemed to have just picked them up. It was worth it because it was near the Imperial Castle and a flower shop favored by aristocrats. I heard it's fresh for a month even after it's cut off. It's really amazing. If you like it so much, you can take it. Mississippi. But it's a flower you got as a present. Jessica's face turned red even as she said so. Does she like flowers so much? As time passes, they wither and become ugly. They can only be put on display and are not helpful in life. In the past, she had thought it would be better to look in the mirror than to look at flowers, so she didn't like them very much. When she said, "I don't need it," Jessica held a bouquet of flowers in her arms as if she was forced. It was a very natural attitude because she knew Celine would no longer be angry for nearly a year. Oh, I almost forgot. The letter from Oscar has arrived. That's very good news. Jessica took out a letter with no pattern. Oscar's letter only contained his initial, not his full name, so no one knew yet that he and Celine were exchanging letters. It was the same when they wrote each other's names in the text. He decided not to write their full names, Oscar or Celine, but just their initials. They agreed with each other to avoid any misunderstanding, but if she thought about it, there was a risk of appearing as lovers who exchanged secret letters. Rather, it would be easier to make excuses if they wrote their full names when someone noticed each other's names. They were exchanging letters with initials. If they were caught, any excuses would be hard to understand. Well, I'm not even a lover yet, and it is Lyra's unrequited love, so I don't have to say that it's misconduct. Chapter 68. Anyway, since the family was talking about their marriage, it could be considered impure if it was impure. Celine needed help exchanging letters with him. The only person she knew was Jessica, but inevitably, Annie now knew it, and both of them all. The first time I sent him a letter, he didn't reply for quite a while. As she was about to be disappointed, she was a little moved by the man who visited her and handed her the letter. After that, the reply was not too late. Sometimes it came back so fast that she thought it had already arrived. It was all about asking for her regards or devoting himself to studying, but she couldn't hide her excitement about the achievement that she had taken away by the man Lyra loved. It was enough to make her feel like she would be running around the whole mansion and trying to talk out loud about the fact that she was exchanging letters with him. But I can't do that. If she used the hourglass, it would be okay, but if she did it in her sober mind, she would only repeat her mistake again. Celine took out the letter paper she always used and wrote back to Oscar. In the first part, she wrote in detail about the weather and health stories, and how well his studies were doing, as always. After that, it was spring, and she wanted to go out to see the flowers. As she was about to finish the letter, she remembered what Lyra had been up to. If I write down Lane's story, how will Oscar react? He might be jealous. If he might not be jealous, he might be nervous, if not jealousy. He might be curious about Lane's identity as it was related to the girl he was going to marry later. The most desirable reaction would be for him to pay no attention, but thinking that he would, she added the story of Lane and Lyra. She hoped he would reveal the identity of the man she did not find, and she ended up wondering about the man. Shall I deliver it to Mr. Oscar? Yes. Keep it and send it in a few days. He would be panicking if she spent a little time and sent it. It was only when he couldn't see and didn't hear the news that he would miss. Just like a few months ago, a late letter moved her unthinkable. There was no mention of Lane in the letter back from Oscar. She didn't know if he had avoided it on purpose or if he hadn't been interested, and she couldn't mention it twice, so Lane's story naturally disappeared from the letter. She hoped he would care. Celine spent the winter with self-study, Corinne's love counseling, classes with the viscountesses, and studies in many fields. The Count continued to work in the capital because the fur business was so successful that he couldn't care about other businesses. Even though he was in the capital, she couldn't see his face often during dinner time, but sometimes she asked her in a subtle way if she had any other information when they had dinner together. Now there will be a full spring, so there will be more nobles taking off their fur. That's right. I hope spring will come soon. Despite Lyra's unnoticed reply, the Count smiled without showing any signs of displeasure. Is your daughter beautiful in any way she does or speaks? Celine, who had never received unconditional love even from her mother, was full of wonder. Are you thinking about the next thing in the fur business? Lane asked after coming to dinner after a long time. The question was asked to the Count, but his eyes were evenly divided between Lyra and Celine. He seemed to be looking forward to how they would respond. Yes, since the fur business is in a stable position. Now that the trend in the capital has passed, I should expand into the provinces and work on other businesses. Why is it that you are expanding your business even if you are the best in the empire in terms of wealth? Do you want to sweep all the empire's goods? At the Count's undiminished spirit, she naturally cocked her head. What do you think of that, Lady Lyra? Asked Lane, who was still testing her. It was amazing to not give up even though he had heard disappointing answers several times so far. Of course, he didn't show as much interest as he had done for the first time, but Lyra was always his priority to ask if there was any hope left. In spring, thick outerwear becomes unnecessary, so why don't you look for light materials? Light materials, you mean? Yes. For example, silk that is good for color or velvet with a soft touch might be good. Celine swallowed the soft soup with a side dish, stiffening the face of Lane. It's a soup with broccoli that I hate, but how is it so sweet? Did she really think what she just said was a good idea? That's a good idea. Silk and velvet have quite a few likes. They are also used a lot as dress materials. Personally, I think it would be nice to have a light silk. We can also cover up the sun in the summer with it. That's a very good idea. Is it a good idea to suggest the already widely used fabrics for a new business idea? Celine kept her mouth shut as she continued to eat while trying to bear her mocking, and she suddenly felt a gaze. As she looked up, she could see Lane and the Count looking this way. Do you have anything to say? Celine, I wonder what you think. Alas, you're in dire need of a new business item, aren't you? Well, father, what do you want me to say when all of my exploits in the fur business has been lost to Lyra? Besides, she didn't want to get Lane's attention anymore. She was satisfied with what she had taken from Lyra. She thought too much attention would only hinder her future work. I agree with what Lyra said. I'd like velvet and silk. The velvet dress is very beautiful. The eyes of the two men showed disappointment. I only agreed with the lovely Lyra's opinion, so why should one side be praised and the other side faces disappointed eyes? If that's the case, I have no choice but to live up to your expectations. Oh. Come to think of it. As she had a gesture as if something had come to mind, the Count, Lane, and the Countess, Lyra's gaze went to Celine. Celine smiled softly and curled her eyes. I'd like to have a velvet dress. I think it's perfect for the change of seasons. You'll look great, sister. Is that right? Lyra also smiled broadly at the wicked woman's stupid remarks. Are you satisfied? Are you disappointed, two men? The Count no longer spoke to Celine. Still, he was a loving father to Lyra, and it was the beginning of the nonsense. After a quiet meal only for Celine, she went up to her room and drank tea before bed. When she was reading a book while drinking fragrant herb tea, Annie, who was waiting by her side, was restless with her fingers crossed. What's up? Do you have anything to say? Ah, that's what I... Now that she was used to decorating her face with makeup, she hid her freckles and acted as if her fair skin was her own. Celine didn't know what she had made an excuse for Lyra, or maybe she was giving her the information without making an excuse, but now she seemed to be a close aid of Celine, showing off her beauty to other maids. Don't hesitate to speak. I want to go to the festival next week. Maybe a day or so. No, I'd like half a day. Can I take a vacation? Festival? It was time for the festival. A festival welcoming spring was held over the weekend at a time when it changed from winter to spring every year. It was a festival for the common people, with many street vendors and performances on the streets, but aristocrats often stopped by because they had a lot to see. Celine in her childhood was poor and it was too dangerous to go alone, and she never stopped by because she didn't want to get involved in the lives of ordinary people even after she became a noblewoman. Of course, she was still not interested, but she readily accepted Annie's request as she knew it was one of the few entertainment attractions that ordinary people were waiting for. Chapter 69. Do it. You can take 2 days off, so enjoy it. Is that true? Yes. I'll call Jessica, who's been off for a long time. It looked like she was bored. It didn't matter if Jessica wanted to participate in the festival. It wouldn't be too inconvenient if there would not be there serving. Cleaning and washing water would be done by other maids in the mansion, and drinking tea or changing clothes could be done by herself. It would not be nice to be seen doing what a maid was supposed to do since she was the daughter of the family of Count Vermont, but it would be better than a rumor that she was persecuting and afflicting her maids. Annie looked pathetic, and her cheeks were colored rosy. Thank you very much, miss. No, it's nothing. Talk to me when you want to rest from now on. I have 2 maids, so even if one takes a break, I'm not that uncomfortable. Miss. If she could express Annie's face, she was deeply moved. It might be because few owners, like Celine, easily gave their maids a vacation. Celine of the past had made some maids do useless things all day long, and made a false accusation and got angry. It had been excessive, but besides her, there were several aristocrats who had used their own maids as emotional garbage cans. A position in the family of a noble was not easy to get, so most of them put up with it, but if they had a chance to move, they would quit without regret. Oh, and... Yes? Or you can wear my clothes if you need to. I can't lend the clothes I got as a gift, but the clothes I bought are fine. And the jewelry, too. Are you serious? Annie's face turned into an embarrassment as if she had never imagined it. At best, everything she had bought in a boutique was all. They were all right to dispose of because they were clothes she did not want to wear and would not wear anymore. There was no need to do this, but it was more like making patronage with the clothes she would throw away because it did not cost her any loss by being nice to the spy of Lyra. As she wore makeup and a golden brooch, there were already some maids who were envious of her. She was young, but she dressed up beautifully and went to meetings with her master. In addition, unlike in the past, the wicked woman behaved in a calm and quiet manner. It was a festival that many masters would carry their maids around all day long, and if she gave her a vacation and lent clothes, it must be beneficial to her. Annie's vacation was for promotional purposes. I hope you'll go with your close maids. Huh, yes. Is that right? Of course, there wouldn't be a maid in the mansion of the Vermont family who could enjoy the festival with her. The Count and Countess were stingy on the vacation for maids, and Lyra would not arrange her maid to Annie, who was on vacation from the wicked woman. The festival day came and Celine spent the day with Jessica after a long time. Annie dressed herself up from the morning and left the mansion. She picked out the cheapest clothes Celine had and put them on. The more gorgeous she was for promotional purposes, the more Celine's position would rise. Don't you want to go to the festival, Jessica? Celine, who had been reading books all day because she had no schedule, asked. Jessica, who didn't know she would be asked such a question by Celine, shook her hand in embarrassment. No. I'm fine, miss. Really? Yeah. Are you saying it's okay not to go or you don't want to go? She was willing to let her go if she wanted to. Even if she didn't use her vacation, if she went for a while, it didn't matter. As Jessica lingered and unable to answer, she asked her intentions again, and Jessica confessed her real heart carefully. I'd love to go, but I have to serve you. If you want to go, you can go. If you want to go, go. All I have to do from now on is to read books anyway. She drank a lot of tea and didn't want to drink any more until she went to bed. So there was no need for Jessica's serving anymore. Fresh water was full in the water bottles, so if she drank it, then it would be done. But I am worried about you. Annie's out, too. I would be only at home. What are you worried about? Strictly speaking, staying in a mansion would be the safest and least to be worried about. Even at Celine's facial expression for her to go quickly, Jessica couldn't answer easily but then clapped her hands as if something had come to mind. Well, why don't you come with me? Where? Festival. It's not going to be dangerous because it's still early. There will be a lot of guards on the festival day. Going to the festival? Me? I've never thought about it. Don't you want to go? That was the question Celine had just asked. If she wanted to go or not, she might have wanted to go when she had been very young. But she couldn't go at that time. It had been similar even after she had joined the Vermont family. Being a noblewoman, she didn't go because she thought she should avoid the play of the common people. And now, may I go now? Her heart suddenly fluttered and pounded when she thought about it. Whether her cheeks had been flushed, Jessica began to get ready to go out before she could even hear the answer. Celine stood up with the words, "Wait a minute," as she stared at the out-of-the-way clothes and ornaments Jessica had brought. Miss? Are you sure you're not going out? Jessie's face turned sour again. In the past, Celine had done mischievous acts to her many times, and Jessica seemed to be looking forward to going out with her owner. In the past, how could I be so cruel to such a child? No, these outwear clothes are so noticeable, and let's go out in plain clothes. It wouldn't be a good idea to make a rumor of it as a nobleman's walk. Then, Jessica's face turned red. Miss. Get ready quickly. I'll be back before dark. Yes. Wearing neatly braided hair and unmarked dress, Celine touched her hair still. She felt strange as if she had gone back for more than a decade. If I'd lived this normal life before I came to the mansion of the Vermont family, If so, would the future have changed a little? She shook her head thinking. As long as the demonic Lyra had been there, she would never have been able to live a decent life. She had begun to hate her and the Countess for a ridiculous reason, and it seemed to have come to a similar end. She stared out of the window, shaking her regret off that had already been late. The view continued to move up and down, perhaps because it was a carriage used by the servants. She felt sick and her butt's hurt. She thought it was only yesterday when she had slept on the rock floor. This was nothing to her. As Celine stared out of the window without saying anything, Jessica, who sat on the opposite side, spoke cautiously. "You're not comfortable, are you? You should have ridden in a proper carriage." "No, it's okay. I don't have to try to stand out." Young children or young women were more likely to be exposed to danger in places with large crowds, so she had to refrain from any noticeable action. Therefore, only one knight had been brought in. It would be suspicious if two strong men were attached. Sitting in the carriage seat and now invisible, the knight who first came with Celine had a very nervous face. No matter how recent rumors about her have abetted, the nickname Evil Woman has not dropped. However, as he sat in the driver's seat and was not seen right now, the knight who accompanied her for the first time had a very tense face. No matter how the rumors of her had softened recently, the title of a wicked woman was not taken away. "Miss, I think we've arrived." Chapter 70. It didn't take much time to get from the mansion to the center of the capital, so it was quick to get there. Celine, who got off a little from the square, held Jessica's hand tightly so as not to fall over the crowd. If she fell alone, she didn't know what would happen. Having confirmed that the knight was right behind her, she stepped out into the street with reassurance. He was so nervous, but fortunately, he seemed to have been in good shape. "Miss, look at this." Who had hesitated when she had asked her to go? Jessica ran around excitedly like a fish in the water. She was very cute, shining her eyes on the coarse ornaments and dolls. There were tens of thousands of times more precious and beautiful things in the mansion, but why was she greedy for things that were likely to be broken in no time? "Do you like it?" "Yes." "What a cute hairpin." "Really?" Celine, who had been handed a hairpin in her hand, put it back in Jessica's head. When she saw only one, it was so crude, but when she put it in her head, it was worth seeing. Maybe it went well with her plain clothes without decoration. "It looks better than I thought. I'll buy this one." "How much is it?" "Miss." Celine pulled the wallet out of Jessica's inside pocket. Jessica stopped her very hard, but she didn't want to scuffle it with her because of a hairpin that only cost 10 shillings, so she quickly paid it and walked away. "It's too much for me, miss." "Jessica, you have to say thank you when someone gives you a gift." "But I can't help it if you show such dissatisfaction in your look." "I have no choice but to throw away the hairpin." Celine warned her lowly in imitation of the wicked woman who had harassed her. But instead of being surprised, however, Jessica smiled, giving a little bit of strength to the hand she held against Celine. "Then thank you, miss. I'm so glad. It would be nice if you said that at first." Now she seemed perfectly unafraid of Celine. She had given Annie, who had been Lyra's maid not long ago, a festive holiday, and had accompanied Jessica for a walk. Moreover, the intention was impure, but there was a time when she had given a brooch made of gold and given a break when there had been nothing to do. Although she might still be called a wicked woman in the public, for them she was like a saint. Presenting some of Jessica's eye-catching ornaments and dolls, she walked a little and came to the square. On the stage set in front of the fountain, performances continued from morning to evening. Celine, who watched the old man sing for a gentle melody, bought street food for sale in the corner. Because she bought the two, they thought that those foods were for Jessica and herself, but the destination of the food was for the knight and Jessica. "What about you, miss? Do you think I will eat this kind of food?" She couldn't have eaten it because she hadn't had money in the past, but it wasn't now. "Are you not going to eat?" "Yes, I had too much tea earlier." The knight looked puzzled as he did not know that she would take care of his share. If he were a knight from the nobility, it could be, but not many nobles cared about a knight from the common people. He bowed his head and apologized as she clicked her tongue because she was so unhappy when he alternately looked at between the food and herself. "I'm sorry. I'll be glad to eat." Celine, who nodded to the knight's reply, sat down and watched the performance where the stage was clearly visible. Spring came, and the gentle wind and warm sun seemed to cover the cold, weary heart. As she listened to the sound of the song with her eyes closed, she remembered the past when had been poor and lonely. She had used to feel happy when she had heard a song from afar on the festival day. Unlike now, she had been totally lacking in everything, but her heart had not been in any discomfort. Can I be happy to live like this? Life couldn't be happy to ruin someone. But there was no other option. It was the greatest joy to live to ruin Lyra. Celine shook her head. Yes, it was clear that God gave a second life for revenge, not necessarily a second one for happiness. Therefore, it was right to wish for the destruction of the saint, not of her own happiness. As she tried to turn away from the past by grasping her broken heart, a shadow fell on her head. As she raised her head to wonder who dared to block the view, there was a little familiar face there now. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I see you more often than I thought." Asher smiled softly and replied. At first, he met her at the general store, then at the jewelry shop. He had always embarrassed and troubled Celine. Celine didn't like Asher, especially those blue eyes staring at her as if he knew everything. "Have you come for a walk?" Do I really have to answer back to him? Celine glanced beside her at the waiting knight. He showed a stiffly strained shoulder and his right arm ready to attack the opponent at any time. Only then did Celine, who was a little relieved, nod. She thought it would be better to have a cold reply and send him away quickly. So did I. The festival of the common people is full of energy. I understand what you mean. I thought so, too. But all of a sudden, it didn't. The festival, which had been sentimental and quite enjoyable until now, quickly turned out not to be so. The knight who was eating was very nervous, and Jessica was shaking in surprise when she recognized the man. Isn't it really the worst? Every time she met him, she felt uneasy, and she only wanted him to understand and disappear. Oh, I see. Unlike Celine's wishes, Asher smiled at her attitude as if he felt a wall and it was funny. He was like a child holding the candy he had been waiting for. He had a child's expectant face, knowing how much the content would please him. I can't help it then. Does he mean that he will step down? She looked up at him with a heart that desired to escape quickly, but he did not take his eyes away from Celine's jeweled eyes for a while. What the hell is he doing? What's his intention? She couldn't understand him paying much attention to her as she had nothing he could use. Of course, for Celine, the attention and goodwill of men were the same as the air, so it was very natural for strangers to talk, but this man in front of her was a little different. I'm sure there's something he wants. It was not Celine's love or interest. She couldn't quite figure out what made this man's eyes shine. Like the eyes of a prey-seeking beast, Celine faced him, unable to avoid his eyes. By the time she felt that his blue eyes were somehow getting darker and darker, a man who seemed to be his party approached. Mr. Asher. He was the one who had overpowered John and Paul the other day. He had instantly incapacitated the two knights in that narrow space. It would have been impossible for him to do so without sufficient strength. Suddenly, the fear of the moment was resurrected, and as soon as she was about to get goosebumps, Jessica also grabbed Celine's sleeve. Miss. It's dangerous. Jessica must be thinking so. And it was the same with Celine. There had never been much harm, and she didn't think their status would be too high, but the atmosphere was dangerous. Asher did not move at all even though his name was called. What should I do? When Asher did not take his eyes off Celine, the man who arrived late drew his ears to Asher's face. Then Asher whispered in his ear as if he had waited, and the companions who had come to him quickly disappeared back into the crowd. I have become a loner because my party has a business to do. Chapter 71. He shrugged his shoulders like the time when he had the fierce eyes of a prey-seeking predator. So? Will you mind if I stay with you for a moment? In this crowd being alone is dangerous, isn't it? Well, I don't think it's dangerous. Rather, his presence seemed more dangerous. Despite Celine's reply, which was close to rejection, Asher sat in front of her, regardless. Nothing was laid on the ground, but he didn't care if the dust was thick. Celine swallowed a false smile because he acted at will without asking for permission. No, it's dangerous. He answered as if there was danger ahead. If there wasn't, he would make it. Celine, who swept away her goosebumps after a moment of horror, tried hard to ignore him. She wished that his party would come back soon, and he would disappear together with them. Come to think of it, your clothes are pretty simple. His eyes swept through Celine's body. It seemed that it was a totally different outfit than before. It was no wonder that she had been wearing a dress at the first meeting, which Lyra had been given as a gift by Oscar. Celine didn't feel the value of answering back. If he had had an idea, he wouldn't have asked her that question. It was ridiculous to dress up colorfully in such a crowded place. I'm sure you'll get a lot of presents. I guess you didn't get a nice present that you like. There was a meaning in the man's words. It was hard to figure out what he meant since they were thickly covered, but it didn't sound like a thoughtless, spontaneous exhortation. Celine narrowed her eyes. It was a look of doubt. What are you talking about? It doesn't mean much. It simply means that you are beautiful, and men around you won't leave you. Is it true? Why do I keep worrying? She should just ignore it, but after a few words, she kept answering. Again this time, as he was about to answer something, she soon swallowed her words. A bit of silence followed. In the meantime, the person who sang on the stage changed from an old man to a young man, and the fast-paced, upbeat song made a noise. The man, who turned around and saw it, suddenly grabbed Celine by the hand, muttering, "It's faster than I thought." What's this? Just as she was about to shout, firecrackers exploded all over the place, and people who were surprised by the flames that exploded here and there ran around to escape from the square. Celine, too, got up from her seat in surprise. Before realizing that the sound of firecrackers was just loud but not hurtful, her body was stiffened, feeling fear by the sudden situation. "Miss." She could hear a voice nearby as if it was calling her. "What the hell am I supposed to do?" "This way." As she was in a panic, her hand was pulled by a very strong force. In the midst of her hectic mind, Celine was forced to be led by her captured hand. It felt as if it were the only touch that would save her. Out of the square, far away, past the waves of people, she ran and ran until she was out of breath. She fled from people passing by like a flash as if she had run so fast in her life. She thought that she was fortunate to have come in comfortable shoes, not pointed ones. It was when she entered a quiet alley that she had never been in before when she had been a commoner. Then Celine realized that the man who held her hand was not a knight, nor Jessica, but a beast. Ha, ha. Unlike Celine, who was breathing heavily, Asher was calm as if nothing had happened. He bent his upper body to support Celine's body, which was panting. "Are you all right?" "Ha, ha. No." As if it weren't okay for anyone to see, he asked Celine's condition and patted her on the back. He even wiped it with his sleeve when he saw a drop of sweat coming from her forehead past the side of her face to the end of her chin. "I don't have a hand towel, so forgive me for my rudeness." What's new? He'd already done so many rude things. The degree of the rudeness of wiping the sweat off with his sleeve was nothing but a trifling matter that could not be considered impolite. Only a long time later did Celine escape from his arms and ask, looking around. "Where the hell are we?" "Well, somewhere in the capital." "It's a place I don't remember." "Ugh, isn't that a pretty good distance from the center?" "I'm afraid so." Not a carriage passed, let alone a shadow of a man. "I didn't move on something, but how did I get this far?" Suddenly she felt dizzy, and her eyes went black. She couldn't figure out how to get back. Now all this was in an unpredictable situation, something that she had never experienced before. Unlike the worried Celine, Asher did not respond much. She asked him if he knew how to get back, but the answer was no. What the hell happened? When she asked him while wrapping her head, all she could hear was that he didn't know. It was worth it because they ran away in a hurry. Celine soon decided to stop asking him something. It was nothing but a waste of energy. Let's go back now. How? Wouldn't it come out of somewhere if we walked around with no definite objective in view? What if we go to a more remote place? Then I can't help it. It was only natural to walk until they found a road, but there was one concern. It was to see if her weak legs could stand. There was already a slight pain in her feet. Before long, it was clear that something bad was going to happen to her ankles. Will they really be all right? As soon as he saw Celine's gaze on her leg, he looked down for a moment. He had a thought and asked her as if he had found the answer. Do you have any pain in your legs? Though she had been a commoner in the past, she was now a daughter of a noble, so shouldn't it be natural? She only took a short walk through the garden. Walking for a long time gave her unbearable pain even though she might be used to the high-heeled shoes that overworked her feet. Would you like me to carry you on my back? Yeah. If you have trouble walking, I can't help it. No. How can I do such a disgraceful act? Celine tried hard to pretend that she was okay and took the lead and stepped out of the way. As she walked briskly without knowing where she was going, Asher burst out laughing behind her. Let's go together. Does he feel all right in this situation? Without knowing where she was going right now, she had no idea what she was going to do, and Asher came near her and adjusted his speed to walk with her. Are you sure you don't want me to carry you on my back? Sure. If your leg hurts, please let me know. It's a street that no one's in anyway. It won't happen. Celine did not give her eyes to Asher, vowing that she would never be carried on his back even if her leg was broken or even if she died. Asher continued to smile at her determined appearance. I never thought I'd walk alone with you. I'm surprised too because I don't get to walk together with you like this. Well, sometimes a new meeting is important, isn't it? I agree, but that's only when I meet someone who can help. I think you are someone who can help me. You think the opposite of me. Celine was treating Asher coldly because she had a long life as a wicked woman. Still, he kept talking and expressing favors, apparently not hurt at all. Is he a man without a grain of self-respect? She was surprised at the image that was completely different from the one she had met for the first time, but she tried hard to keep herself calm. The image hidden inside her would certainly be different from what it was now. There was something he wanted, and he just stepped back to get it. She stiffened her back, thinking that she should not be easily deceived by what he would say. Chapter 72. You don't know much about me yet, I assure you. Isn't that the same with you? We don't know each other very well, so we can't decide whether we will help each other or not. Did we went the wrong way? The surroundings grew darker and darker. This is the capital, right? Is there such a quiet, dark place in the capital? Their arrival in an unknown place made her shiver. She was afraid that something was wrong. Well. His eyes turned dark blue as he stared at the side of Celine's face, who stretched out her legs as hard as she could. I think I know quite a bit about you. Why do you think so? It's not just a thought, but it's real. Don't tell me, do you think you knew me well because of the rumors you heard about me? If so, he was a fool. He would soon fall on the street and cry because he was so easily swept away by rumors. I also know what you're showing outside is different from what's inside. Only the sound of their feet made the space full, and the voice of Asher rang low. She couldn't tell because she didn't see his face, but it even sounded gloomy. You've met me a few times, and you know nothing about me. She stopped taking steps forward at his remarks, which irritated her nerves. She didn't like him as he kept showing up without revealing his true identity. If I show this hatred towards you, isn't it natural you have to step back? Even among the common people, such courtesy and consideration were taken for granted even if they were not nobles. In an empty space that had no one else but them, she wanted to avoid the man named Asher. Celine took out the wicked face she was hiding and looked at Asher. What the hell? She couldn't keep up with the harsh criticism. His blue eyes, which glowed horribly in the dark, took away all of her thoughts. That's really... Is a human being really capable of having such a light in their eyes? As if it were emitting light, Asher's blue eyes shut Celine's words and stopped all of her movements at the same time. Not even the stars in the night sky were that bright. You, what the hell are you? Who are you? The shaking of her vocal cords shook the words which came out between her red lips. The emotion she encountered because of this unknown being, and the fear that she might be with an animal in disguise welled up inside her. It was hard to understand. Are you finally interested in me, Lady Vermont? As he moved one step closer, he narrowed the distance even further, though they were already quite close to each other. Looking down at Celine from only a palm's distance, he reached out and wiped off her pale cheeks. The warm palms of Asher remained on Celine's cheeks for a long time. Celine flinched, which was an unavoidable reaction. By the time the blue eyes facing Celine's green eyes turned dark blue, Asher broke his long silence and opened his mouth. I'll let you know if we're getting a little closer. Personally, I'd like to let you know. She fixed her gaze in Asher's eyes without answering anything. As if possessed by his blue eyes, he bent his straight upper body and kissed Celine's forehead. Celine's eyelids sank gently, feeling as if the pouring starlight had kissed her. Celine couldn't open her eyes quickly to the illusion that she was dreaming. Well, I look forward to seeing you again soon. His lips fell off her forehead, and when she opened her eyes to a voice that said goodbye, he was gone from the place, though she heard his voice a while ago. What was more, the dark vacant lot, which had nothing except for Asher's eyes, had disappeared and turned into a crowded street. What the hell is going on? The only thing that was left was the warmth on her forehead where his lips had touched, so she raised her hand and touched it. Her hands came in contact with a very fine but moist liquid, and it was hard to tell whether it was a trace of Asher's kiss or her sweat from being nervous. Miss. As she turned her head to the distant voice, she saw two people rushing urgently. Jessica. You can't imagine how surprised I am since you just suddenly vanished. So was I. Jessica wasn't the only one who was surprised. Celine also couldn't calm her pounding heart. It looks dangerous, so we'd better get back to the mansion as soon as possible. We've already enjoyed enough of the festival. With Jessica saying, we've been looking for you for a long time, Celine couldn't come to her senses for a while because what had just happened made her mind messy. The cause of the explosion of the firecrackers in the square was unknown. The only explanation was that the firecrackers that would be used on the stage were scattered all over the square and that someone set it on fire and set off an explosion simultaneously. Fortunately, few people were hurt because it was only loud and not a great firecracker. There were a few people who fell and were injured by someone instead of the firecrackers, and they said all of them were treated by the imperial court. I was really surprised to see you disappear in the blink of an eye. It was because she ran while holding Asher's hand. Although she ran for quite a while, she arrived at a spot she had never seen in her life, and she was able to go back near the square in no time. What the hell happened? A few days later, she couldn't understand it. The whole situation was incomprehensible, as if Asher had done magic. Let's not think about it anymore. If she tried to solve a problem that had no answer, she would only get a headache. Celine shook her head. Due to her action, Annie, who was combing her hair, dropped her comb on the floor. Oops, miss. I'm sorry. Jessica helped her when she was pouring tea. Are you all right, miss? Even in the past, they seemed to talk a lot, but why am I bothered by the two maids so much? When Celine closed the book with a loud noise without giving any answer, the two maids made a fuss again like larks. Shall I change your tea? Don't you like the perfume on your hair? Do you want a new refreshment? Would you want to braid your hair? Both. She tried to clench her teeth and shout, but she could not bring out a word when she faced the two maids staring at her with their eyes shining like a lamb. Phew. Eventually, she loosened her face and swallowed the harsh words that she wanted to say. She had done well to them a few times, but when she saw them, she didn't want to scold them. This is not what a wicked woman does. Take turns to go on a vacation. I'll pay you. I don't have a place to go to. I'll get bored if I don't work. So am I. I enjoy being with you. Celine wasn't very happy to spend the day with them. Of course, it was much better than in the past when they had been afraid and shivering, but it was annoying to tune in to their non-nutritive chatter. Nevertheless, the only reason I can't kick them out easily is because they are on my side for the first time. Apart from Jessica, she hadn't captivated Annie's heart yet, but she liked it very much that she did cute things beside her because it was fun for her to betray her master and wag her tail to her. So miss, have you heard of it? What? Miss Lyra. Celine showed a little interest and Annie released what she had heard with a sneaky smile. She sent a letter to Princess Frederick. Princess Frederick in a letter. Celine tried to guess Lyra's intention. Lyra might have told the princess that she would want to marry Oscar. The princess, whose engagement with the crown prince was in progress, was an influential person in the family of the duke and the head of aristocratic ladies. Celine remembered that the princess had really married the crown prince and ruled the empire with his father and other aristocrats. Chapter 73. The family of Count Vermont had been her faithful dog, and their relationship would become very close if the engagement of Lyra and Oscar took place. So Darian and Lyra, who had power on their backs, were able to cut Celine's head easily without much trial. It was quite bad for Celine if they got acquainted. Even so, because she couldn't think of a way to stop it, she was just sitting still. Really? Celine answered carelessly. Then, to regain attention from Celine, Annie released the following information. Well, it was about Mr. Oscar. Was that so? Yes. I didn't hear any more details, but I'm sure it's about the engagement. She was pretty quick-witted. It was also good to give her master the information she needed. Why do you think so? That's it. She had been so good at chattering so far, but she suddenly closed her mouth. Why? Did she do something dishonest? It was only then that Celine expressed her interest. She was wondering where she had stolen Lyra's information. The truth is, I've just read a letter from Miss Lyra to Princess Frederick. As expected, she was full of wickedness to the bone. She had been jealous and envious of her master's wealth, and Celine had seduced her, and Annie had betrayed her master in an instant. When Celine's eyes narrowed, Annie hurriedly made an excuse. Of course, I've never read the contents of Miss Celine's letters. It was sealed tightly in the first place. You mean you'd read them if I hadn't sealed them? I wouldn't have done that. Absolutely not. Annie even waved her hand and denied it. No, she must have ripped open the sloppy letter. She didn't mean to scold her or kick her out because of her behavior. Annie couldn't betray her anyway. Annie must have wondered about Lyra's secret, who pretended to be noble and lofty. Furthermore, it was information that would help her. It was not a big matter for Annie to read that letter. Celine smiled softly and sweetened Annie. Well, of course. I believe you, Annie. Really? You happened to see it, didn't you? Letters were spread out on the table, so you could easily see them when you cleaned, or you would check them if you thought it was garbage as they were on the floor. Celine gave Annie a chance to tell a natural lie. Celine also flashed Annie a smile as if she was telling her that she did a job well done regardless of what answer she chose. That's right. I came across it while cleaning. I knew that was the case. Miss. Thank you very much for believing. So, what's the content? At Celine's eye expression, Annie said what she had seen. How far have I told you? Oh. The letter she was going to send to the princess said that she was sorry that she didn't have a chance to meet him because he was busy and that she wanted to be an adult soon and be with him. Isn't it quite clever to look into the real influential person of the family of the Duke of Frederick and even send a letter in person? Maybe it wasn't the end yet, but Annie kept on talking. The last thing she wrote was that she needs the princess's help. Most of the contents of the long letter were about Oscar. She only had one line of greeting for the princess who was going to receive the letter. Even the common people don't write it that way, said Annie, who spoke ill of Lyra. How have you put up with it in the meantime? Really? I hope the princess won't be disappointed if she receives Lyra's letter. Oh, Jessica. Can you give me a new tea? I'd like some green tea to clear my head. Yes, miss. Just a moment, please. As soon as Jessica left the room, Celine beckoned Annie to lower her head. Then she bent her knees and lowered her posture like a dog that was listening well, and Celine swept her hair with praise since Annie did a good job. Your hair looks empty today. Do you like purple or green? Pu purple. Yes, do it. Celine had to give a prize to a dog who had listened well. It was not just for a prize that Celine stroked her hair. Celine would definitely give Annie something great if she stole information again. She took out a purple hairpin from the jewelry box after she noticed Celine's intentions when she dismissed Jessica. It was a violet crystal. The price was relatively cheap compared to the real jewel since it was rare, but the nobles did not favor it much. Therefore, it seemed to spread like a fairly high-end fashion among the common people. It was because no one recognized the woman though she wore the real jewel. When Celine had first given her with colored crystals, she was so happy when she had received the golden brooch, and Celine had prepared some more. It was a very useful tool for getting high-quality information at a low price. Annie put the hairpin on her hair, and she seemed to think that it looked good on her. Annie, who looked into the mirror with her excited face, suddenly opened her mouth as if she had thought about something. But you know what, miss? Celine looked at her all of a sudden because of Annie's serious look and speech tone. Is there anything else you need to say? Maybe. Mr. Oscar is interested in Miss Celine, not Miss Lyra? Celine's mouth crept up because of the careful question. That's what it looks like to your eyes. Why do you think so? It's because he doesn't even write to Miss Lyra, but she exchanges letters with Miss Celine several times a month, and? In fact, there's already a lot of gossip among maids. Mr. Oscar visited you on your birthday, and Miss Lyra's birthday. I heard that there was someone who saw you and Oscar talking alone in the garden. She glanced at Celine with a puzzled look as if it were true. Yeah, I can't help it if rumors like that spread since I walked around in public. Celine struggled to hide her joyous mind. Did Lyra hear that? She must have heard of it. Her maids would love to babble as well as Annie. That was why she had sent him letters. Celine was wondering what kind of expression she would have had on her face. And the dress is decisive. Aha. How could he give both of you a similar dress as a gift? She spoke as if she could not understand the situation now. Annie was not the only one. No one would understand what was happening now. Even Celine, the person who was involved in the case and who organized the project, could hardly think of it as a dream because Oscar had been so easily bewitched. Anyway, not just me, but all the maids in the mansion think so. They are sure that the person Mr. Oscar likes is you. She was truly convinced. Celine hid her smile and pretended to be calm. If the rumors were true, I would be the wickedest woman of this age because I stole the heart of my sister's lover. No way. He's not even officially engaged to Miss Lyra, so he can change his lover at any time. Really? Sure. Even if I'm taking this approach on purpose, is it true? Annie might say yes again in a loud voice. She had been jealous of her master. She betrayed her and wanted to be someone's concubine and raise her status. Today's conversation was very informative. I'll look forward to our next conversation, Annie. Annie felt instinctively that she would soon receive a prize of more value than jewelry if she continued this pleasant conversation. Chapter 74. What do you think? Isn't that weird? It's not strange. You're very beautiful. Thank you, Alicia. If you say so, then that would be it. In front of Alicia, Lyra, who acted like the perfect child, smiled shyly. Alicia responded with a gentle smile after seeing this. They looked much more like a mother and daughter compared to Celine and her mother. Alicia was like a mother to Lyra. Alicia, who had been with Lyra since birth, had relentlessly removed anything that blocked Lyra's path. Alicia was originally a lower aristocrat. Unfortunately, however, Her husband had died, leaving behind a huge amount of debt, and could not pay back all of her debts even after disposing of her noble title. The trauma led her to have a miscarriage, and she tried to give up her life in grief over losing everything. And it was the former countess who had happened to save her. She had brought Alicia to the mansion of the Vermont family and allowed her to live a new life as her own maid. But whether it was a trick of fate, heaven took the former countess from Alicia. She had lost her life while giving birth to Lyra. Therefore, it might have been inevitable that she had begun to take care of Lyra on behalf of the former countess. The only thing she had was Lyra. She had vowed tens of thousands of times to keep Lyra no matter what happened. And that could have happened if it had not been for the dirty mother and daughter who had crawled into the Vermont family. Ever since the day they had come in the mansion of the Count, Alicia had cursed the mother and daughter every day for the happiness of her precious Lyra. Thinking that she could meet Oscar soon, Lyra was staring out of the wagon's window with a light humming sound, and she turned around to Alicia as if she had suddenly recalled something. So what happened to the wagon driver? What's the name of the driver who was kicked out of the mansion? You mean Elect? He was a driver who was fired because of Celine the other day. Oh, I guess that's his name. It's been a while since he got kicked out, and I'm worried. How is he? I've taken good care of him so that there would be no complaints from him. What about the other driver? I found another job for Yagi. I'm sure cleaning the stable was a lot of trouble. Alicia is a friendly person as expected. Lyra laughed softly. It was a sweet, fragrant smile like her name. You are a lovely woman who gives your kindness to even a mere wagon driver, Lyra added. I'm a little scared of Celine these days. Are you scared of her? Since last summer, she's been acting like she's changed, but she kept breaking my heart. Miss. Alicia's heart ached because of the dark cloud over Lyra's face, who should have a fresh smile like a flower. Since Celine had suddenly got Oscar's attention, Alicia had meant to scare her with the drivers, but the wicked, vulgar bitch had cajoled the prostitute and ruined her job. She had even warned the employees of the mansion by pretending to be on trial for a trivial matter. Even though she thought of it again, she burst into anger and clenched her fists. The noble and prestigious family of Count Vermont was being messed up by the dirty prostitute mother and daughter. I will make sure that such matters won't bother you anymore. Really? Yes. I even put Annie on her. Yes, Annie. Annie, who she had put next to Celine, had been a child who admired, respected, and envied Lyra. She had been always busy praising Lyra because she had brainwashed her on how noble Lyra was since she was just a child who had come to the mansion of the Vermont family. She had been also relatively easy to deal with because of her vanity and desire for things. When she had promised to take the position of a head maid, she had even announced that she would gather information from Celine. Can the child really do well? She seems pretty close to Celine these days. You don't have to worry. She's trying to keep a close relationship and beguile Celine now. Really? For that, but... Lyra blurred her words. In fact, even as Alicia looked at her, Annie seemed to be too close to Celine, so she was a little worried. Alicia tried to ease Lyra's worries, thinking that she needed to remind Annie of the future that she could promise her. Yes. I even told her how awful young ladies who attended the meeting are. I also told her that Celine is busy decorating her face by staying in her room every day. Maybe it's because she looks like her mother. I hope so. Don't worry. When Annie gets a little more settled down, I'll add another maid. She's much smarter than Annie, and she's going to drive that bitch into hell. Yes, that's a good idea. Alicia, you have the same mind as me. That's great. While talking about this and that, the carriage slowed down and stopped smoothly. After arranging her outfits and waiting in the carriage for a moment, there was a knock on the smart wagon outside. When she got off the wagon, Princess Frederick smiled brightly and welcomed Lyra. Lyra. Miss Julia. Isis, who was different from Oscar but had a softer line than him, always excited Lyra's heart because she reminded her of Oscar as a boy. With her black hair in braids, she was as beautiful as the goddess in the myth. In admiration of her beauty, Lyra bent her knees and greeted her politely. In response, Isis also welcomed her with a face-to-face greeting. "How long has it been? I couldn't attend the party on your last birthday because I was busy. I'm so sorry." "No. I was so happy that you sent me a present. The book was so interesting and fun that I stayed up all night reading it." "Well, that's a good thing. I thought you'd love it if you were Lady Lyra." Isis took Lyra's hand. "Come in. A new chef has prepared some great food. It's enough to make me eat with a short mouth." "Oh, how delicious is it? I'm really looking forward to it." As they continued their conversation, the two ladies, who held hands together, slowly headed for the dining hall with a gentle and graceful gait. Perhaps Isis's words were not false, but all the prepared food was to Lyra's taste, and it made her hands always relaxed and leisurely, a little but quick. Nevertheless, because she couldn't eat enough, Lyra left the food in moderation and looked around her surroundings. The quick-witted Isis noticed the reason for her action and soon gave Lyra the answer that she wanted. "I wanted to spend some time alone with Lady Lyra, so I informed Oscar ahead of time. Then he must be on his way now." "I'm sure he is. I'm sure he'll be here before we know it while we are having a cup of tea. I'm always having fun talking to Miss Isis, so he will come any moment now." The conversation Lyra had with Isis was not just empty words, it was really fun. Most of their conversation was about Oscar because after talking to Lyra, Oscar's attitude had changed a little. Of course, Lyra hadn't given too much kindness or care to him, but small gifts had been sent in. He had said that he was sorry that he couldn't contact her properly because he had been busy, and he had enclosed a letter. And today, she was hoping for something a little bigger than it had been before. For example, her engagement with Oscar, which she had mentioned briefly in the previous letter. Would he be busy with his graduation exam? Maybe so. Julia, who replied and recalled Oscar's face, smiled softly with a friendly sister's face. He's the type who's struggling to put an end to it even though he's already perfect. So he looks so lonely. But, he's always nice. The pressure would be great as it would not be long before he would get enormous power on his back. He didn't want to miss a little thing. That was why he tried to work day and night. So even though he had been careless with himself, Lyra still liked him. If so, that's a good thing. If he could look good to Lady Lyra, everything would be okay. He doesn't have to look good on women other than you. Chapter 75. Julia's expression who said, "That's a good thing," was not a reassuring face at all. On the contrary, it said, "If you have something to say, you can say it." Lyra answered without delay because she had intended to carry on the following words even if Julia did not stick to her generous attitude. "Nevertheless, I get lonely sometimes." "Oh, my God, I'll have to scold him for making such a lovely Lyra lonely." "No. I just feel that way alone. Rather, I didn't help Oscar who has worked so hard." Feeling like a real scolding, Lyra rushed to make an excuse for Oscar. Of course, even though she knew Julia would never do so, she deliberately shook her head, blushing her face, as what Julia wanted from Lyra was such behavior and speech tone. Julia wanted the image that she was smart but would not come forward, and sometimes complained but obedient. In addition, she had to keep an infinitely low stance to the really influential person of the family of Duke Frederick. There was nothing she could do to get engaged to Oscar, and Lyra did it very easily because Julia was the only one who could connect her with Oscar. Will it really be? Yes, of course, if I think so, it will be done. Even if Oscar was the successor to the Duke, he was just a doll who listened to Julia, who had real power. Aside from the royal family, she was the eldest daughter of the most powerful family, and her unique cleverness and cunning earned the enthusiastic support of the aristocratic party. Therefore, no one could disobey her whose engagement with the crown prince was in progress. Even more so, her younger brother, Oscar, would be. The rumor is just a rumor. Did she also hear the rumor about Celine? But it would have been a useless rumor that would do no good. Anyways, with one word from Julia, Oscar would go to Lyra. Finally, Oscar is here. Shall we talk about the backstory when he sits down? Yes. In Lyra's eyes towards Julia, there was boundless trust. Oscar, who discovered Julia, came by her side with a big step. "Have you had lunch, Oscar? Lady Lyra is with you. Didn't I tell you?" Oscar gave no answer to Julia, who had not said a word or two about Lyra's visit. "Please sit down, Oscar. You'd better have some tea and rest." He sat next to Lyra without a word because he dared not to sit next to her sister. Lyra blushed and glanced at Oscar. She didn't even get a proper greeting, but she looked good whatever he did. "I haven't seen you in a long time, Mr. Oscar. How have you been? Your face is very bad. I think it's the last moment of the semester. I wish I could take care of you, besides. I'm sorry I couldn't do that." "It's okay. You don't have to do it." Julia clicked her tongue to Oscar, who still talked bluntly without knowing a woman's heart. "Oscar, aren't you being too blunt on your fiancé whom you've met in a long time?" Oscar's and Lyra's reactions were very different when they were told about the word fiancé. "Sister, not yet, we are not engaged. You'll do it as soon as Lady Lyra becomes an adult. It's a matter of time, isn't it?" Lyra wrapped her palms around his cheeks. The hot cheeks looked as hot as the sun. And Oscar was unable to answer that question again this time. It wasn't the promised future, but it was true that it was becoming a fait accompli to some extent. "Lady Lyra, Oscar is blunt, but please understand him. That's the way he's always been. I am his elder sister, but I can't help it." "No. It's okay. Never mind." Lyra was happy just sitting side by side with Oscar. Isn't this even the mansion of the Duke of Frederick now? It felt as if time had passed, and she had married him and enjoyed the tea time at the mansion of the Duke. She really hoped so. Perhaps with the help of Princess Julia, the possibility grew big, but she was desperate because of the slightest sense of anxiety. "Celine. White color is matched well to you, so I'm sure your dress is beautiful." "Oh my God, would it be?" "Sure. I'll have to prepare a golden rose wreath." Still years away, Julia replaced her blunt brother. With her active help, they could maintain a more sunny atmosphere than the roses in the garden, even though Oscar otherwise did not participate in the conversation. Since then, Lyra, who had been smiling all the time, has returned with her very satisfied face, and Julia, who has returned to the garden after seeing her off, threw away her smiling face and scolded Oscar. "Oscar, how many times do I have to tell you to understand?" "Sister. The Vermont family would be helpful in many ways, so I used to say that you have to stay close." The hands that touched her hair looked very rough. "Once again, don't neglect your relationship with Lady Lyra. In the Empire, there is no family that has more money than the Vermont family. I'm sure you know that what our family needs most now is the money of the family of Count Vermont." Oscar could not readily answer his sister Julia. He just awkwardly touched the cup he held in his hand. "Why don't you answer? It's not like that." "So? That's..." His lost eyes swayed from side to side. Julia laughed at the sight as if she was struck dumb in embarrassment in the face of her brother's poor appearance. "Don't tell me, is the rumor true?" "The rumor?" "The rumor that you have been interested in the prostitute's daughter." "The prostitute's daughter." She didn't give her name, but Oscar realized what she was referring to was Celine. Not because he had treated Celine as the daughter of a prostitute like Julia, but he just noticed it right away because he had been continuously thinking about her in recent months. "I don't know what you're talking about. She got the last name of the Vermont family by remarriage, but I could never allow the girl." "How can you be interested in such a dirty girl? You would rather have a declaration to live alone." "Oscar, the origin doesn't go anywhere. What if she resembles her mother and seduces a man with vulgar words and acts? I'm sure she'll betray you. And I don't want the blood of a prostitute mixed into our family." It wasn't wrong. No matter how much she washed her identity, it was true that Celine was the daughter of a prostitute, and it was also true that she bewitched a man with that magnificent beauty. But why? Every time his sister uttered bad words about Celine, he felt uncomfortable and heartbroken. It was as if the dagger, which pierced Celine who was not here, was penetrating his heart. Why? Why on earth? Celine, who had always come to his mind, had teased him with a bright smile or sometimes with a captivating look. She had afflicted him. His heart had ached at the time, but it had been a little different now. If it had been the kind of pain that had made him feel bearable, or sometimes his mood had been felt somewhat better uncontrollably, now it was so painful as if his heart were pierced by a dagger. She's not the girl who's going to hear such insults. Contrary to rumors, Celine was very pure, beautiful, and fascinating. Nor did she bother Lyra. Rather, drawing and ostracizing lines because of her origin seemed like Darien and Lyra. Whatever she used to be, isn't she now the lady of the Vermont family? The aristocratic ladies also rose in status to their husbands when married. What is the difference between Lyra, who would marry him and be a duchess, and Celine, who became a lady of the family of Count Vermont from the common people, with her mother's marriage? If Lady Celine hadn't come from the common people. No, if she were an ordinary commoner. If she were, maybe, he wondered if Celine, not Lyra, could be by his side. He came up with a face of Celine, assuming that it could not be achieved. Her long, voluminous eyelashes crept down, her eyes glancing at himself, and a charming smile came to his mind. She's such a beautiful girl. Chapter 76. Oscar? Julia called Oscar, who bit his lips without an answer and was lost in thought. She looked at him like she didn't know why he looked like that. Then suddenly, she could recall where she had seen that face. The look on Lyra's face that she had seen just before. Oscar, you, no way. She couldn't put her own hypothesis out of her mouth. That rumor was real. When she had first heard the rumor through her maid, she had flattered but had not gotten angry. She and her brother were noble-blooded people which a daughter of a prostitute couldn't even look up at. So she hadn't even dreamed that her brother would be interested in the prostitute's daughter. Julia shook her hand and drank the tea in front of her. She was thirsty enough to keep her thirst going. And she fiercely looked against Oscar. She was so shocked and distressed, but she still resented her brother, who was totally bewitched by that bitch. After all, Julia, who couldn't stand it, got up from her seat and slapped Oscar on the cheek. After being slapped defenseless, he looked up at Julia, unable to recover his surprised face. You're going to ruin our family. Sister. How could the rumor be true? You'll still say you're the heir to the Frederick family. You'll have to watch your sister be humiliated. How, you? As her sister let out her pent-up anger, Oscar was confused. What the hell? Then he realized the identity of his emotions he had just felt as he had recalled Celine. Why did I love Celine, not Lyra? And he had been thinking about her for so many nights, but he couldn't realize what it was like to him. Why didn't I notice it when this mind was a little bit smaller? At her presence, which had grown so large that it had become a part of his daily life, he was filled with regret. Julia wrapped her head, looking at it because it was all revealed on his face. You're a smart kid, so I trust you'll end it with your heart. She didn't mean to believe it. It was more like a threat to do so. If he didn't, he realized that she would certainly not let Celine go. Do you understand, Oscar? Julia hastened. If I don't answer right away, she will hurt Celine. Why can't I say that I will do that? Oscar. Now Julia's call was more of a cry. She even clenched her fists, forgetting her prestige. If you keep coming out like that, you know what I'm going to do. Julia, who could no longer control her anger at his hesitant attitude, turned as if she would hurt Celine at any moment. It was then. Sister Julia. Oscar called Julia. Julia turned around, hoping that he would make up his mind. He stared at his sister with a distorted face from a distance, and he looked miserable and sad as if he had lost half his soul. I'll do what you say. So please. Oscar wrapped his face, asking her not to hurt the poor girl who was despised by everyone. She was a weak beast who he had to bury as soon as he realized his great heart. He, who sobbed faintly as if he were about to be broken, put life back into Julia's face. She approached Oscar slowly. A white, shiny hand stroked his hair. Yes, if you are bewitched by a wicked woman, you'll suffer this much. From now on, be sure to keep your mind tight. This sister believes you. Oscar's sobbing grew. Julia, who touched it as if it were very lovely, continued to speak. I'll send a present to Lady Lyra, with her favorite bouquet of flowers. All you have to do is be ready to succeed our family as always. The strength was given on her hand stroking his hair. Oscar's head was slightly nodded and Julia, satisfied, disappeared into the mansion, leaving only his brother in the garden where everyone had left. A few days after Lyra had visited the mansion of the Duke of Frederick, Celine received a letter. It came from Oscar, who had always exchanged letters. It's weird, Oscar's letter had just arrived. Not even a reply had been made yet. But why did I get another letter? When she opened her letter in wonder, there was a surprise inside. I won't be able to exchange letters in the future, as I'm about to graduate. Please take care of yourself. Why? Haven't you been so busy as ever? But why don't you even have time to exchange letters? How many characters do you have to write for a letter, and are you too busy not to even write those? She read the letter again and again because she couldn't believe it. However, reading it again did not change what was written. His letter was all about the last letter. You haven't even replied yet. What's the matter? He wanted to see you so much and he sent another letter. Mr. Oscar is doing such an unexpected action. Do you want me to get some letter paper? She could not show any reaction with her stiff face. If she wrote back to the person who had said goodbye, she would only hang on to him. If she didn't write, her relationship with him would end. I thought I bewitched him, but it's going to end this easily. She didn't know what to do in such an unexpected situation. She couldn't think of a way, so she put the letter on the table and lay down on the bed. A sudden rush of tiredness came over her. She didn't know anything would come to her mind after a short sleep. Miss? Are you sick? Feeling unusual, Jessica and Annie glanced at Celine, who was lying in bed, then quietly went out of the room. Celine thought with her eyes closed. If the hourglass could go back a little further, she'd find out why, but she couldn't figure out anything by 5 minutes. Celine, who closed her eyes in the quiet room, took a short nap. It was because she felt so tired and wanted to put a blind eye to the situation that was wrong with Oscar. Celine, who fell asleep like that, could open her eyes by the time the sun began to set and the room was dyed with scarlet. Having a deep sleep, a dreamless dream, made her feel better. In addition, she could decide not to stay still but write a letter to Oscar asking him why. Why did you suddenly make that decision? By any chance, do you have anything bad? I'm worried. If your reply is late, it'll be okay. Please don't tell me to stop writing a letter, please. The last word, please, hurt her pride because she had never hung on anyone in her life. What else I can do? He was the best card that could hurt Lyra. She couldn't be taking him away from her like this. So please. The letter was sealed in hopes that the long-awaited relationship would not end. Then someone knocked on the door when she was about to call one of her maids to deliver the letter to Oscar. It was both Jessica and Annie who came inside when she made a sound. Miss. What's up? Celine scolded Annie because of her loud voice as soon as she came in. Still, she made a cry with making a grimace. What shall we do, miss? What's up? It was Annie who couldn't bother her with anything. Instinctively she felt something was wrong and hastened her. No, well, phew. Mr. Oscar. Mr. Oscar? What about Oscar? He was the one who had said goodbye to Celine to stop writing a letter. What else happened to make Annie cry? Celine's face turned pale little by little. He sent a present to Miss Lyra. Then? Well, he mentioned engagement in the letter. Engagement? Celine's face turned pale when she heard the news. This was because it felt like a permanent farewell with the letter that had arrived today, even though it certainly could happen. Now Miss Lyra is bragging about the engagement down there. She's reciting the contents of the letter like a song. I couldn't stand it when I opened my eyes. As Annie was huffing, Jessica with an embarrassing face was seen behind Annie. Annie's uproar was embarrassing, and Jessica also seemed offended. Chapter 77. What exactly did he say? I can't fall asleep thinking about Lady Lyra, who will wear gold roses later on at our engagement ceremony. Is Oscar such a romantic person? He had never said such a thing to herself. He had just written such a cliché that the dress looked good. But did he send that awkward letter to Lyra? Celine's expression became mysterious. As she rolled her pupils, she could not believe that. Annie's voice grew louder if she agreed. That doesn't make any sense. Why can't that Oscar suddenly be kind to Miss Lyra? In the meantime, a lot of maids have seen Mr. Oscar being blunt to Miss Lyra. As she was speaking, Annie kept her face cool with her hands as if she got angry. I'm sure she said something to her as she met the princess last time. That's how gifts used to be sent in Oscar's name after she met the princess. Either Oscar was forced by the princess or the princess sent it in Oscar's name. It's either. Annie, the day came when I thought I was lucky to have you by my side. Celine felt a little relieved thanks to her chatter. How good would it be if her speculations were true? That didn't mean the breakup that had arrived from Oscar would disappear, but at least she could find the cause forced by the princess. In addition, this breakup might not be his real intention. Annie, you always help me. I've never seen a maid who's as smart as you. Thank you, miss. It's a very interesting story, thank you. Please let me know next time you have any interesting news. Yes. Don't worry. Annie's back appearance of leaving for information again with a gallant heart seemed very reliable. Is there another maid in the mansion who is as talkative as she is? Celine handed the letter to Jessica, thinking that it was really lucky to have Annie on the same side. Give it to Mr. Oscar. Yes, miss. Shall we send it right away? Yes. And. As Celine couldn't easily talk, Jessica blinked and waited for the next words. And if he doesn't accept it, please tell the deliverer to throw it at Oscar's feet. Yeah? I want him to do it by all means. Oh, yeah. Jessica walked out of the room with her head cocking. A little time later, as dinner time came and Celine went downstairs, she could face Lyra, who was visibly smiling. I'd like to twist that little neck right now. Shall I use a sandglass? Shall I twist her neck and kill her and turn the hourglass right away? In imagination, she had already killed thousands of times. However, she stared at Lyra for a while, and turned her eyes away, because she knew she couldn't win her with anything today. She glanced at Lyra's bright face as she waited for the Count, who said he would be back at dinner time after a brief business trip. Seeing the pin on her head, the necklace on her neck, and a rose-shaped jewel, she realized that they were Oscar's gifts. Moreover, Celine was very upset to see Alicia's expression behind Lyra. Alicia always looked at herself with an arrogant, unlucky look. As if to curse, she did not hesitate to look contemptuously. I'll get rid of you, too. I can't help but do it if you stare at me with the look of wanting it like that. I have no choice but to bring you to the same end as your master. When she imagined that she would cut out the eyes at the end, the Count returned from going out. Obviously, he had gone out alone but somehow came back in becoming two. I'm sorry I come late at night. I went out to see Lane, so I come with him. I thought it would be better to have dinner together. The Count continued to talk, patting Lane on the shoulder. Because I've been bothered by the customs office. When I called Lane, he solved the problem at once. I was glad my master had a personal network at the customs office. I have quite a wide network, but I couldn't handle the officers in the customs office. They were hard-nosed, so they didn't listen to me as I wheedled them. The master of Lane is a great man. I'll deliver your words to my master. Because of Lyra, who was smiling broadly, the Countess, who was fresh like a flower as usual, the Count, who was full of excitement because things were going well, and Lane, who she couldn't know his real intention, Celine had to smile awkwardly after them, in spite of all the curses in her heart. Can I ask you why you went to the customs office? Oh, it was a small matter, but the speed to handle my case was late, and I went there. Now that winter is over, I was about to take the fur out that I had brought in, but the customs office charged an exorbitant tax. Once the fur came in the capital, it was registered in the capital, so they told me to pay a tax when I go out with the fur again. Oh, my God. That's too much. I thought so too. I applied it because they said that there is a tax reduction on goods that have been brought in less than half a year, but they haven't contacted me for more than a month, saying they have to take care of things in order. It was a luxury of all things, so they charged too much tax on it. Just in time, Mr. Lane helped you. That's right. I was extremely fortunate. Celine couldn't believe it since he had the customs office under his control. She had thought Lane's master would be great, but she swallowed her admiration because he was greater than she thought. I have to host him with great devotion and care, but it's a normal dinner at the mansion at the very least, so I am ashamed. No, I'm fully satisfied. Why don't we set a day and have a formal dinner party? It's not bad. What do you think, Lane? I'll make sure to attend when the time is right. The Count smiled gladly as he alternately looked at between Lane and Lyra. If Oscar was not there, he wanted to tie Lane and Lyra together. In addition, as Lyra offered to set a day and hold a formal dinner party, he had a big smile. The Count doesn't even know who Lane is yet. What in the world has broken the boundaries of that hard, profit-making Count? No matter how helpful someone was, he turned around coldly when his business was done. But it was clear that Lane and his master had given the Count a great deal of help if the Count allowed his free access to the mansion and agreed to hold a dinner party. Celine didn't like the situation. She was told to part by the man who she had worked hard for several months, but others seemed happy. A hidden nature in the depths of her mind twitched. She wanted to spoil this happy situation that everyone except her was happy. At least Lyra. Celine wanted to make Lyra's mouth shut and made her frown because that damn necklace kept getting caught in her eyes. Oh, come to think of it. According to past memories, the Count was going to be quite troubled by similar luxuries besides fur. The tax issue had been put on the back burner. Since the summer of this year, the top trading companies had gone bankrupt, and the problem had not been solved until the end. Is it Darien who solved it then? For this, Darien had been greatly appreciated by the Count and had had a life as the new Count of the Vermont family. But that was very later, so it was only Celine who knew the solution right away. I guess today wasn't as wild as it was. Now that she thought of it when she needed it like this. She was not satisfied with doing the work, but it was the best way to gain the Count's trust, and to show that she was superior to Lyra, and the Count no longer needed Lane's help. In addition, I can take away the future of Darien, who ordered to cut off my head. At last, Celine's lips drew a line. Chapter 78. The Countess was the first to notice the change of Celine, who had been eating silently with a stiff face all the time because Lyra had a mate. She was thinking about connecting Lane, or his master, with her daughter. That was why she smiled brightly, hoping inwardly that Celine would say something great. I hope we can come up with a solution soon, in case there's a similar problem ahead. The Count's agony was originally a matter that would happen later, but a new business item, called fur, shortened the period. Now that there were no problems, if he thought about it in a leisurely way, he might come up with a way. I can't let that happen. When Celine hurried to advise the Count, Lane took the initiative. Lady Lyra, do you think there is a way to solve this problem? I can't believe he asked Lyra. Does Lane still think she's smart? She might be smart if he looked at her in another way. If he only evaluated her as a noble lady, she might look good. But it had nothing to do with business, and it was no use asking because the previous glory was also the one that had been stolen from Celine. Celine thought he'd noticed by now because he was a quick-witted person, but he still had a lingering attachment to her, and Celine snorted at him, thinking he was stupid. I don't know. I've never thought about it, so I can't think of it right away. I think so too. However, if this kind of meeting is repeated, sometimes the best way comes out. I wonder if you have any thoughts, since you have given various advice on the Count's business. Lyra blushed, not knowing that Lane had been driving her to hell more and more. She was in agony for a moment without losing her smile, then opened her mouth with her eyes glistening as if she had a good idea. I think the best way is to get along closely with the customs staff. Since my father has been struggling despite all his hard work, so why don't you introduce him to the customs staff? Introduction. Yes. Mr. Lane solved this matter right away. So I think it would be better if you introduce someone you know to my father. Really? Lyra, how can you choose only those words that suit my taste? Celine put the salad in her mouth, holding back the laughter that was about to burst at Lyra's thought, which was so one-dimensional. The dressing was over, and the sweet and sour taste burst in her mouth, distracting her mind. No one could match her words to the noblewoman-like answer. Only the Countess, who grasped the mood, gave a clumsy agreement, saying, "Our Lyra is very sociable." You might see it like that. Lane's complexion became visibly dark. Have you finally given up your lingering feelings about Lyra? Lyra, who did not know the reason, opened her eyes wide and read his countenance, and the Count cut the meat without a word. The bad feeling which she had received because of Oscar's letter turned to a good one again. It would be now if she wanted to step into the conversation. Celine, who wiped her lips with a napkin, quietly opened her mouth. Lyra, I agree with you. I think it's important to build connections in many ways. But if you have to ask someone for help whenever you have a problem, it would be a little embarrassing to prove that you can't do anything on your own. That's not what I mean. The customs issue is hard on my father, so let's get help for the matter. Lyra hurriedly made an excuse, apparently unaware that she would be attacked. Celine apologized as if she did not know Lyra's thoughts. That's what you mean. I must have misunderstood a little. I'm sorry, Lyra. No, sister. You've only been in the Vermont family for 2 years, so you might not know. So, in the end, I was so ignorant that I opened my mouth hastily. Don't you really know that the more you repeat that, the more stupid you are? Celine even wondered if she had to say Darian's idea in response that was so unworthy of her to deal with. That could be so. I thought it would be better to open a warehouse right near the capital in order not to pay taxes. I'm sure I had this narrow-minded idea since I joined the Vermont family not long ago. The Count and Lane's eyes followed her, thanks to her brief expression of thoughts. They didn't hear the details, but they looked like it was what she was talking about. The Count was interested because it was Celine who had helped the fur business last time, and Lane also shone his eyes because he had experienced her brilliance a few times. Only a foolish Lyra was already preparing to laugh at what a vulgar wicked woman would say. A warehouse right near the capital? Specifically, what does that mean? Oops, it's just a small idea that won't help. Never mind, father. Celine waved her hands as she straightened her face. Then this time, Lane pressed for an answer. No. Every thought begins with a very small one. I'm curious too, Lady Celine. If you really want. Don't laugh, just think it's a little girl's simple idea. Celine, who's laughing at you? Don't worry. Didn't your own daughter just laugh at me? It would not be an optionally deaf, but the Count pretended not to know it. Well, it's nothing special. I just thought that since the capital's tax is the highest, it would be better to build a warehouse near the capital and bring things inside only when there's demand. It's a very ordinary idea, isn't it? It was quite ordinary, but the Count had never thought of it before. Of course, such an idea was not necessary. It was because he had never handled seasonal products like fur, so he didn't have to bring back out the items he had brought in. Once brought in, it was usual to sell them until they ran out of stock. Moreover, the Count had been able to properly control the quantity due to his many years of experience. He would have never imagined this would happen. If the Count had a little more time, you would have come up with the simple idea. But the winner was the one who preoccupied the object or thought. Those who hadn't thought of it were going to be losers. It's not a simple idea. That sounds like a great idea, especially for the Count who is planning to expand his business in the future. That's what I think. With the exception of the capital, it costs little tax to move to other provinces. If you finish trading there in the first place, you won't have to pay any taxes. An individual can either wear it or bring it in as a luggage. Ha! That's so true. Even if it is the business group, I'll take care of everything that goes into the capital anyway, so I can buy it outside the capital and take it straight to the provinces. You're right. It's like finding a way to save all the taxes and reap huge profits with just one thought difference. As if they had found a gold mine, they chatted about the advantages of the warehouse. The Count laughed loudly, saying, because all the supplies and development are concentrated in the capital, the land price will be cheap. Meanwhile, Celine glanced behind her. Jessica was seen holding the box. She was cute. Maybe it was because she had requested Jessica to pay close attention to it recently. She kept the request of Celine, and she always carried it with her, not knowing how the box was used. I'm going to turn it over right now and have the initiative of the words the Count and Lane said. She decided to steal his thoughts as the Count had stolen her accomplishments for Lyra, and turned the hourglass over straight away after she received it from Jessica. Celine, who's laughing at you? Don't worry. I'm back at the right time. Celine grinned. The opportunity came for her to take Darian's idea, and the Count and Lane's thoughts, and to enjoy the glory of her own. Well, I'll give you my specific idea, though it's narrow-minded. That narrow-minded idea that you expect to save a large amount of taxes. Chapter 79. And it's your idea. The Count and Lane's eyes grew bigger and bigger at her slow-paced remarks. They, who had thought it was a good idea since the first time she had talked about the warehouse, were amazed at the specifics of the explanation. What in the world did you think about that? I just came up with the thinking to myself. It's not such a great idea. No. It's a great idea. It's a matter that your father needs right now, and it's a great idea to contribute a lot to his profits in the long run. I'm just grateful if you see it like that. At the smile of Celine, who was pretending to be shy, Lyra, who did not recognize the situation, gave advice. But wouldn't the cost of building a new warehouse, the cost of hiring new workers, and the cost of maintenance, be a hurdle? It may be if you see it simply, but it's a different story if your father expands his business by adding more items. It's going to be less than the fur tax he brought in. Was the fur tax so big? Yes, it's a luxury. I guess Lady Lyra only knew that fur would be popular. That was great, too. As Lane said it like a joke, there was silence in the dining hall. Lyra, you could blow yourself up like that. The reaction of Lyra and the Count was expected. You have been honored to say that you did what you didn't do, so you'll pay the price. I couldn't believe you stole it when I was right in front of you. It would not be enough for both of you to be executed and hung on the wall of the castle. Celine brightened her eyes and waited for Lyra to open her mouth. The fashion of fur. Stealing the glory was the Count's solo act, and Lyra looked puzzled and cocked her head as if the Count had not spoken it to her. At her reaction, Lane was bewildered. He seemed not to understand why the conversation didn't work. Let's have a meal first. I've found a good way, and suddenly I have a good appetite. It was the Count who cut off their conversation. He recommended them to eat in a loud voice, unlike him. Next to him, the Countess had an unhappy look on her face, and Lyra continued to eat, according to her father's words. It was a maneuver to cover up the truth. Do you know what you're ashamed of? Celine did not regain her glory, but she did not intend to retrieve Lane's attention, so Celine followed the Count's words and resumed her meal quietly. The people of the Vermont family all closed their mouths and resumed their meal, so Lane followed them with a dubious face. The Count did not look at Celine until the meal was over. She was about to go up to her room after dinner, which had suddenly become quiet. The Countess's wife smiled awkwardly and agreed with the Count's remark that he would not be able to serve tea because it was late at night. Did the Countess even notice that the Count had deprived her daughter of glory? It might have been her best, as she could never offend the Count's mood. Celine knew her survival instinct so well that she left without any complaints, saying, I will dismiss you first. Now Lane won't come back. A little thought would tell him the truth. He might feel resentful when he knew the truth, and even his master might be so. Celine's steps upstairs were light. Jessica glanced at her with a burst of laughter. But that laughter didn't last long. Because after a few days, Lyra received a present. It was a gift from Oscar. Inside were beautiful dresses, shoes, gloves, and even jewelry. Dear Lady Lyra. It's simple, but please, I'd like you to wear it to my sister, Julia's birthday party. Oscar even accompanied a friendly letter as if he had really intended to give her his heart. Besides, please. Isn't that what I wrote in my letter to Oscar? It was a letter that she had barely sent after thinking so many times to rewrite the letter. I can't believe he sent a letter with that, please, to Lyra. Faced with Lyra's wicked face on the first floor, Celine rushed back to her room, feeling like she was about to fall straight to the floor. Miss. Let me be alone. When she dismissed Annie, who was stamping her feet and was crying, she became lonely. Oscar, did Oscar really decide to cut me off? Otherwise, he would not be so cruel like this. It was her who had not even received an answer yet. She wrote a letter with her sincere desire to continue to exchange letters, but her hearty effort returned as a gift to Lyra. She felt like crying, covering herself with a blanket. It would be fine once there was no one here. So Celine covered herself with a blanket and threw up her sorrows because the opportunity, which she had had, turning over the hourglass, was useless. A few days later, Lyra wore a gift from Oscar and participated in Princess Frederick's birthday party. The princess, who was an adult at the age of a woman, was still unmarried and was on the verge of engagement, so she held a party before sunset. This was all the more so because it was the crown prince that she had a proposal of marriage with. It meant that she needed to be on her best behavior as she might become an empress in the future. And most people, including her neighbors, thought it was natural. It was only natural for Princess Julia to become an empress to keep the crown prince in check. It was also the result of having the support of the aristocratic party. After getting off the wagon, Lyra asked the servants of the Frederick family to find out where Julia was. The reason was that it was not easy to find her because the entire mansion was used as a party hall. Many people gathered to celebrate Julia's birthday, so even her servants did not know where she was. Lyra went around the mansion and managed to reach Julia's side after half a turn. Princess Julia. Lady Lyra. You're here. Oh, my God. You so beautiful today. Julia was surprised and praised Lyra. Mia's face blushed. Really? Actually, these are clothes and ornaments from Oscar. He told me to wear it today. Oscar? How did the blunt man ask such a thing? He seems to really like Lady Lyra. I'd love that. Lyra could not help but expect Oscar even though she knew it was less likely. He had been consistent with his blunt response, but it was how he was with everyone. But recently, he had been a little different. She had been wary of him because he put his eyes on a prostitute's daughter, but he had come back like this. No matter how much the princess had warned him, if he really didn't like her, he wouldn't have put his heart and soul this far. So she had no choice but to expect it. There is not much time left for the princess's engagement. I hope the crown prince will become an adult soon. It's quite inconvenient and cumbersome that men and women have different adult standards. The crown prince was 18 years old, the same age as the princess, but he was not yet an adult. A nobleman generally admitted to being an adult only when he was 2 years older than a woman since he graduated from the academy and studied to take over his family. After you become an empress, why don't you lower the adult standard for men to 18? I should. I think it's the first thing I need to fix. Their conversation, assuming that she would be an empress, was natural without awkwardness. How is the count? His business is always flourishing. That's a good thing. They had no regard for the countess. It was because she was a trivial thing to argue about. If time passed and the flower fell, he would throw her away. Lyra and Julia also thought that the countess's value to the count was just that. Just wait for a while. Oscar will be here soon. He's still working on his clothes. He must have been nervous since Lady Lyra's coming. Really? Actually, I like Oscar's clothes whatever they are. I can't wait to see him. You can expect it because he will appear to satisfy Lady Lyra who he was waiting for. At the words of Julia, Lyra's cheeks and ears turned red. Chapter 80. Please enjoy the party because I have prepared this party's food and drinks for a long time. I'll let him know your table when Oscar comes. Yes, Princess. Lyra covered half of her face with a fan since she felt a sudden heat and settled at an empty table nearby. Some of the young ladies who recognized her hurried to fill the vacancy, and her surroundings were filled with people without a moment to feel empty. How can you be so beautiful today? I think you're getting more spotlight today. On her birthday, Lady Julia is very beautiful, and it's not long before the two of you, even the best in the Empire, have the same surname. Oh, what are you saying? Before that, Princess Julia will have the noblest surname in the Empire, Franz. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. There was one reason that she was the future hostess of the Duke of Frederick. It was more like a fait accompli when they saw that the princess was taking care of her. As Julia had sent letters to all the nobles above a certain level, they were invited to attend her birthday, but having difficulty in getting acquainted with the princess, they targeted Lyra, who was still young and seemingly easy to handle. I can't wait for that day to come. As always, Lyra answered with a sweet smile. In fact, she didn't even know the names of those who surrounded her. For those who were of no value, she could have a consistent smile. She listened only to what she wanted to hear and answered only to it. That was the social world that Lyra had learned. Isn't that Oscar over there? That's true. Turning to a spot where a young lady was pointing at someone, she found Oscar dressed up in a suit that had his family's emblem embroidered on his chest. He turned over all his hair back, and his matureness was outstanding. How cool is he? Lyra admired him purely. He went straight up to Julia. He exchanged words of silence and soon turned to the table where Lyra was. Oh, it looks like he's coming this way. A garrulous lady predicted Oscar's behavior. As she said that, Oscar's footsteps headed for the table with Lyra. She got up from her seat, unable to bear to wait for him approaching. With his strolling gait, Oscar came just around her. How have you been? I've been good. What about you, Oscar? Me too. Oscar's manner was very friendly. The stiffness of his speech was a little subdued and so was his expression. He asked an excuse for a lady who was taking the seat next to Lyra and sat next to her. Don't tell me this isn't a dream. If it was a dream, she hoped she would not wake up. She couldn't even blink. She just stared at the friendly Oscar. Whether he was really determined to love Lyra, he sought her convenience all the time and spoke to her. Lyra was half unconscious. She received his efforts, and around her, they said that the two were very well matched. They're a nice couple, isn't it? Dear Princess. In response, Julia, the person who sought a close relationship between the two, fanned out. Whether she had finished her greetings to major guests or not, she also sat next to Oscar. Real connections didn't show off friendship at these trivial parties anyway. Her real connections were the ones she met and chatted in secret places, which were very few people. The birthday party was just a place of wealth, power, and bravado, so there was no need to spend a long time talking to useless people. I guess Oscar was quite lonely while he was away from Lady Lyra. How sweet of him. I wish he could do that to his sister. Julia narrowed her eyes as if to observe how he would behave. Oscar only had a quiet cup of tea without any particular answer. So did I. I'd like him to graduate from the academy. I'll see him every day then. Is there a girl whose red cheeks match so well? Lyra smiled as if she had the whole world. The good news is that Oscar will graduate this time. He won't make Lady Lyra sad anymore. The word "not sad" contained two meanings. It meant that he wouldn't make her lonely and that he would give his heart. Lyra figured out both of those meanings. Maybe that was why it felt like her own birthday, not Julia's. The two enjoyed a leisurely conversation with Oscar in between, talking about the events in the past, the present, and the future. Most of their stories were about engagement and marriage, starting with the dress to wear at the ceremony and the room they would use in the mansion. It was not long after that someone who interfered with them appeared. Miss Julia. The butler of the mansion ran to Julia, forgetting his dignity. She didn't know what was so urgent, and she clicked her tongue. The butler, who came to her, did not hesitate to tell her why. The crown prince is here. What? Perhaps he was quite surprised by the crown prince's visit, and the butler shouted in a loud voice that everyone could hear. Surprised, Julia was frozen that she could not respond at all. And so was Oscar. The crown prince and the princess talked about their engagement on the surface, but they didn't really get along very well. Why would the crown prince be at Julia's birthday party? The crown prince must have come to celebrate the princess's birthday. Lyra, unaware of the fact, raised her voice, and only then, Julia, who came to her senses, ordered him to guide the crown prince inside. However, the butler, who was instructed, did not have to carry out the task. The crown prince, who already knew where she was, did not wait but went to where they were by himself instead. No matter how dominant the aristocratic party was, the royal family was the royal family. In the appearance of the crown prince who would be the next emperor, beginning with Julia, the guests greeted him politely with their backs and heads down. I see His Highness the Crown Prince. It's been a long time, Princess Julia. Happy birthday. Thank you, Your Highness. The Crown Prince looked away, leaving only a very simple greeting to the princess. The place where his gaze was directed was toward Lyra, whose face couldn't be seen, with a deep bow. She was shivering faintly at the very existence of the Crown Prince that she met for the first time. The Crown Prince smiled to see if she looked very pitiful. Are you Lady Vermont, Lyra? It's weird. I think you became a little smaller. They didn't know why he was interested in Lyra and not Oscar. Her family had great wealth, but she was still only a lady of the family of the Count. Is it because the rumors say that she's beautiful? Or because she is good at grace even at a young age? Or does he have the intention of upsetting the princess? Has he met her before? People in the garden spread all kinds of speculation. Julia was the same. She bit her lip and guessed what had happened between the two. I've heard a lot of your stories. I think you must have wondered about me. Lyra could not understand what the Crown Prince was trying to say. It was partly because her body and heart were hardened since she was the one who met the Crown Prince first, and also because he kept talking to her and not the princess. So now, I think it's time for a face-to-face conversation. What do you think, Lady Lyra? Lyra shook her head reflexively. She didn't want to get entangled with the Crown Prince. Oscar alone was enough for her. If she got mixed up with him, the princess's mate, she was sure she would lose Oscar. Ignoring this, however, the Crown Prince ordered her to raise her head again. It was an imperial order. She couldn't refuse. She couldn't help but lift her head, as not only her, but everyone was forced to raise their heads. What the hell is this? As she raised her head, she could see the face of the Crown Prince who was gradually hardening his expression. Something was going wrong. Lane, who left the mansion, went straight back to the imperial palace. Today, his steps to the Crown Prince's room were heavy. He had always thought that Lyra was weird, but she was definitely weird today. Is Lady Vermont really clever?